Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Green Flag. I'm your host, Lukas Wacker, and with me, as always, we have Cushman. And welcome to the 2020 Motorsports Award Show, presented by nobody, but we have got a very great show in store for you guys today. This is one that we've been planning for a little while, and we're very, very happy with how the results have come in through our social media polls. We'll talk about that in a second, and who we've got nominated for today's episode and the respective awards that we've got on 14 categories, and we've all got three nominations for each of us. So we'll break it down like that. We'll look at who won the social media polls, which we got a lot of traction on, which we were a pleasant surprise, I'd say. Very happy with how that all turned out. And then it's all culminating up to the end of the 2020 Motorsports year. So what a crazy year it's been. We've been here since, I guess, July, June-ish, Kyle. It's been a wild ride, and we've had lots to talk about on this show so far in 2020, and this is a great way to cap it all off.
Oh, exactly. I've been looking forward to this one for a while. Obviously, it's bittersweet that the season's over just because of how kind of insane it was basically everywhere. But it's good to tie a bow on 2020, both the year and the motorsports calendar, because we've got a lot of fun stuff coming up for 2021. But before we completely shift over to previews and all that kind of stuff, we got to put a nice bow on this season, and we got a lot of fun stuff today. We had some great stuff on social media. We got some fun awards. I, of course, am back home and did not think to bring my suit, so that's why half of us are dressed up here, but that's okay. I'm rocking the hometown hockey sweater, so it's basically good enough, right?
Potato, really. I mean, There's no real difference in our wardrobe. We just got lost in translation. It is a 3-hour time difference between us, so, right. I think there's probably that. I think we just kind of introduce the categories here. We'll give them a bit of a rundown of what we've got coming up on today's episode. So first off, we've got the best signing coming into this year. So who performed the best that went to a new team or a new destination this season? We've got 3 nominations for that. We'll take a look at that. That's going to be our first category. Then we've got the best 2021 announcement. So looking ahead to next year, what is looking good so far, and we'll see if it lives up to the hype going into next year's award show, most likely. And then we've got the best paint scheme of the year. Great nominations there. Always fun to take a look at the
of course.
The paint schemes. It's a huge part of motorsports, the visual look of it, because it changed almost weekly for a lot of motorsports because of different sponsors. So this is a great way to kind of encapsulate all the best looks of the year into one category. We've got top prospect. We've got biggest disappointment of the year. Not looking forward to that one, but we'll talk about that a little later on. We've got the best bounce back season. So who bounced back in 2020 that did not have a good 2019 season? The Canadian Driver of the Year award, a very special category to us being Canadians, and we
got to give the Canucks some
social
love
media.
Here,
yeah, we had some great social media attention on that one. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. Rookie of the year, so just who performed the best as a rookie in their respective series. And then a young driver of the year, a very good one. So around under 24 years of age for that category. But who's the best young star in the making here in motorsports? We've got Breakout Driver of the Year, Moment of the Year, lots of great candidates for that one. Team of the Year, Race of the Year, and then to cap it all off, we've got the Driver of the Year award. So 14 different categories here for today's episode. So strap in. It's going to be a fun one. And I think we just jump right in to the first award, Kyle. It's
let's do it.
Best signing going into this season. So who performed the best? So we'll take a look at social media here first. So our nominees that we put out on our Twitter at the Green Flag Pod was Matt DiBenedetto, Chaz Mostert, and Patricio Ward and George Russell for his Sakir Grand Prix one-off race for Mercedes, replacing the COVID-19 ill Lewis Hamilton. So great nominations there. Currently, the winning driver of that category is George Russell for the Sakir Grand Prix.
Hey, you know what? Whatever.
Why not?
Whatever works. I'm sure there's a little recency bias there, but I mean, the kid did perform pretty good, so I got to give it to him there.
Yeah, with 40.5% of the vote, George Russell is winning that. 37 votes in total. Patricio Ward in second place, Matt DiBenedetto, and then Chaz Mostert is in fourth place. So great nominations there, but George Russell seems to be taking the social media award for this one. But we have our own nominations because it's not everybody's nominations are on that poll. So we get to take a look at each of ours. But I'll let you go first here, Kyle. Who did you have for your nominations for the best signing of 2020?
Yeah, so my short list of three, I got to say, it was a pretty weak year in terms of overall driver movement and whatnot. It was a pretty status quo grids and lineups from 2018 to 2019, from 2019 to 2020. Very much not the case from 2020 to 2021. It seems like half of motorsports is either swap seats or something like that. Next year is going to be an insane short list for that award. But for this year, you had to kind of pick through a little bit to find some nominees. And so the short list of three that I came up with was Matt DiBenedetto, obviously, with Wood Brothers in the Cup Series, bringing that car from 19th with Paul Menard in 2019 all the way up to a playoff spot and ending up 13th overall in the championship this season in his first year at that team. Got re-upped. He'll be back there next year. Don't know what the future holds for him past next year, but I think he was a very solid signing for Wood Brothers. Second here, had to go down under for this one. Chaz Mostert for Waukesha Andretti. He went to that team the year previous. Their best finish in the championship was 11th with James Courtney. They had a brand new driver lineup this year, and Mostert finished the exact same place he did the year previous in 5th place. But with that brand new team bringing them from outside the top 10 to 5th, he gets a nomination from me. And finally, not much to compare the previous year because it's kind of a new team. I'm not going to compare Schmidt-Peterson to Aaron McLaren because I feel like it's the same team-ish, but it's pretty different. And that's Pato O'Ward. 4 podiums in his rookie season, essentially, in IndyCar, 4th in the championship. He was superb. So he was on my short list as well.
Yeah, great nominations there, Kyle. Yeah, it was very slim pickings, I'd say, this year for that one. But next year, it's going to be
so many.
Almost impossible to try and trim down a list.
We might have to have like a 10 list short list or something, and it's going to be crazy.
Yeah. Like, as we've talked about this entire year, this is the most insane year of motorsports news I think I've ever seen. And I think this kind of the lack of nominees or lack of standout nominees for this past year really have proven that fact that next season is just going to be insane. That's why we're so excited for 2021. 2020 was great and all, obviously impacted by the pandemic. And, it's not going to be, the greatest product or the greatest year in memory, that's for sure. But 2021 is shaping up to be something very, very special. But for my nominees for the best signing of 2020, George Russell was one of mine for the Secure Grand Prix. I went a little bit outside of the box for these because I had a trouble trying to find one that was really deserving of this award. Nico Hülkenberg for his 3 appearances on the season for Racing Point for his fill-in roles for the ill Sergio Perez and Lance Stroll for their COVID-19 cases over the season. So he did an admirable job there, scoring points, qualified 3rd in a race as well. So very impressive stuff for the guy that went from the couch on basically the Thursday into a 300 kilometer per hour car on the next day after that. And then Pato O'Ward as well for myself. How could you not really, after finishing 4th in the Drivers' Championship, he was just sensational this season. So yeah, those are the nominees for the best signing of 2020. Since you went first, Kyle, who is your winner for the best signing?
I thought DiBenedetto was strong with Wood Brothers. Mostert was strong with Waukesha Andretti. But this one was pretty easy for me. It's Pato O'Ward. What he was able to do in his first season to finish top 5 in the championship with 4 podiums, looked so consistently strong, was extremely impressive for me. And to the point where Arrow McLaren was able to entice somebody like Felix Rosenqvist to leave Chip Ganassi Racing to join their team going into next season. So I was a big fan of what O'Ward did. I think he was the best signing for 2020.
That's a good pick. That is a very good pick. But I'm going to go against that one. He finished 2nd in my rankings, but as the Twitter poll showed, I'm going to stick with that. George Russell is my signing of 2020.
Okay.
The circumstances that he had to go under going into a weekend where he's been racing at the back of the pack all year long and then having the ability to go into the championship winning car and then qualify 2nd in a very snug fitting car, to say the least, for himself. Very uncomfortable weekend for George Russell, but he looked at home and very comfortable in that Mercedes. showing up Valtteri Bottas on the Sunday race. Unforeseen circumstances in the pit lane. That had nothing to do with George Russell's ability. Puncture at the end ruined his race to only score 8th place in the race and scoring his first F1 points. But a win was on the cards for George Russell in his Mercedes debut. And I say debut because I think down the line here, we're going to be seeing George Russell in the silver or black, whatever overalls that they're going to be wearing when he gets there. He's going to be a star in the making. So I think he proved himself just in that one race alone to put the amount of doubt in Valtteri Bottas' mind that he's going to need to go into 2021 and just try and just bear down on Bottas' neck and just try and get the results he can with the Williams car. And then hopefully in 2022, we see him. And this is a long-term play. Hopefully we see him in Mercedes in 2022. So that's my signing of the year. Even though it was late in the season, definitely I felt like it was worthy of being nominated and therefore winning, as the Twitter poll and myself believe. But Pato O'Ward was a very close second, just based off a season-long performance. How can you argue with that? So very great stuff there with the best signing of the year. So congratulations to George Russell on your secure Grand Prix, and Pato O'Ward on a very successful IndyCar season for Arrow McLaren SP. So I think we move into the next one here, Kyle. We've got the best 2021 announcement. So looking ahead to the upcoming year, man, we have got some very, very interesting storylines to keep track of for 2021. On Twitter, we have the 23XI Racing Series. That's going to be obviously the Michael Jordan, Denny Hamlin established team that is taking the charter from Germain Racing, having Bubba Wallace behind the wheel in the NASCAR Cup Series. Huge opportunity here for marketing and a huge person to add to the sport. Obviously, the Last Dance documentary came out over the summer, so Michael Jordan is back really within the realm of the news. And then shortly thereafter, he's announcing that he's coming into NASCAR in the owner capacity. So a very cool announcement there. Sergio Perez, very recent, and saying that he is confirmed to be going to Red Bull Racing in 2021. When we last talked to you on Thursday's episode, we didn't know 100%. It wasn't officially announced, but it is official that Sergio Perez is making the jump up to Red Bull Racing in 2021. Alexander Albon will be the reserve driver / test driver for Red Bull next season. NASCAR's schedule shakeup, and that's across the board with the Cup Series, Xfinity, and Truck Series all going under massive revamps for their schedule. Very much needed schedule revamps because it's been about a decade or so with relatively similar calendars for a lot of these guys. The Truck Series and Xfinity Series have experimented a little bit more than the Cup Series, but we've got 7 road courses on the calendar for the Cup Series next season, a massive jump from their current 3 tentatively coming into the season. Obviously, with the schedule changes that we've had to go through this season, we didn't get to see that amount, but we've got 7 upcoming next season, a couple of new additions, some familiar faces on the calendar as well, so very cool stuff there. And then the SRX Racing Series as well, formerly made by Ray Evernham, very well-known NASCAR Cup Series crew chief, and then Tony Stewart, a Cup Series owner, former champion of the sport as well. They're going in a new adventure, and they're getting a new racing series with some legendary names in motorsports that are going to be going to some classic racetracks, historic racetracks over the summer on CBS Sports. So those are the 4 nominees on Twitter. And I think a little bit of recency bias maybe came out of this one, Kyle, because it's an overwhelming vote here for Sergio Perez, 54.8% of the vote. The next closest is the NASCAR schedule shakeup with 19.4%, then the 23XI Racing, and then SRX in last place. But very solid nominees there, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, a lot of very intriguing announcements going into next year. I think one that was close on my final 3 short list was Kyle Larson as well, going to Hendrick Motorsports, just because I feel like that's probably the comparable to Sergio Perez to Red Bull in terms of a breakout / promising driver going to a top team. And so for me, my 3 nominees, of course, as I mentioned there, Sergio Perez to Red Bull, maybe the recency bias a little bit playing into that one as well for me. But just the fact that it's a driver that I've been watching for a long time and has been a driver that has been on the verge of really great things for a long time, and he's going to get that shot with Red Bull. Not only that, if it does play out on the positive side, then you've got another driver to add into that mix of Bottas, Hamilton, and Verstappen, of guys that are consistently in the hunt for podiums. But if it goes negatively as well, then what does that mean for Red Bull going to the future? So I think that's a very interesting storyline to watch going to next year. Second, the NASCAR schedule, of course. We've been waiting for this big shakeup. It finally happened, and they kind of delivered. We didn't get any like the extreme stuff. We didn't get we didn't get like another short track. We didn't get a street course or anything like that. But they basically did what they could going into next year, and they're trying a lot of stuff. Like we have COTA. We've got so many road courses. We're trying dirt in the Cup Series, for crying out loud. They're throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks. So that's obviously a very exciting one going into next year. And then finally, 2311 Racing. When you have Michael Jordan attached to anything, is going to be big news. And when it's him coming into NASCAR in such a capacity, that's obviously going to be one of the biggest stories of the year going into next year. And when you add in the fact that Denny Hamlin is a part owner, and then they're adding one of the biggest stars in the sport in Bubba Wallace as a driver and giving him that opportunity that he deserves right now, three very deserving storylines going into next year is best 2021 announcement, in my opinion.
This was an incredibly difficult award to try and trim down. There's so many nominees because 2021 has had an insane amount of news. As if you've tuned in on a regular basis, we have the breaking news or the news and notes portion of our episodes is usually about 30, 45, maybe even an hour long on some. I was
going to say 30 is pretty short. It's usually like an hour.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot, and we've had to digest it all. So to narrow it down to three nominees was very, very tough. But Kyle and I see very similarly in this award, with two of the three being the same, being the 2311 or XI Racing, and then the NASCAR schedule revamp. And then the difference that I have, the one that was nominated on Twitter, the SRX Racing Series, the Superstar Experience, whatever you want to call it, that is my third nomination. So Kyle outlined it pretty well there, and the 2311 Racing, obviously a huge opportunity here for the sport to piggyback off of Michael Jordan's success and then build their own success together. And then the NASCAR schedule revamp, something I've been wanting for a long time. I don't know if we'll see what happens. It's a big announcement. We'll see if it actually produces into being like a great storyline throughout the season. That's all in speculation for right now. But in terms of what I'm most excited about or what I'm most optimistic about, I think the NASCAR schedule is going to be very, very interesting to keep your eye on. So who have you got for your winner for the best 2021 announcement?
Look, we've been waiting for the NASCAR schedule for a long time. We've been waiting for Sergio Perez to get his shot for a long time. But nobody saw Michael Jordan owning a NASCAR team coming at all, ever. Just think back. The last championship race we had at Homestead, Dale Jr. interviews Michael Jordan because he's there to support his friend and somebody that he sponsors there with the Jordan brand, and Denny Hamlin. And he straight up asks him if he would ever entertain owning a NASCAR team. And he basically says flat out, no. And less than a year later, he's a co-owner, majority owner of a NASCAR Cup Series team, and one that looks to be competitive. So for me, absolutely the best 2021 announcement is 2311 Racing.
I am in 100% agreement with you there. I think it's a little bit special for us too because the news broke in the middle of an episode, and
literally live reaction.
It was insane news. It was about, what was it, like 9 p.m. or so your time?
Yeah, it was like 9:30 Eastern.
It was late, and we were not expecting an announcement, so we waited to record because there were some rumblings that something could happen. There was some talk that Bubba Wallace could be going to Gaunt Brothers, and that was the new Toyota Alliance team, and they would be building up from like the Toyota. But that was the furthest thing from the truth, as Michael Jordan and Denny Hamlin, what a duo. We've seen him in the past. Denny Hamlin ran a Michael Jordan paint scheme in the Truck Series for Kyle Busch Motorsports a while back at Martinsville. So they've had a bit of a long-standing relationship. Denny's overalls or fire suit is sponsored by the Jordan brand as well. So they've been together for quite some time. And next season, with that team adding itself to the NASCAR Cup Series lineup, such an iconic name in sports in Michael Jordan, adding himself to an American sport that, it could use something like this. And I don't want to slack NASCAR or anything, but, Michael Jordan is going to boost their awareness and their their expansion in terms of getting an overall audience tremendously. And I'm hoping for success for Bubba Wallace next season. We've talked about it plenty on this show. Sponsors have just been released over the past week as well. They are locked up and secure, hoping for success, and they can come out of the gates flying. And very cool announcement there. So just part of even being getting a live reaction to it, but also I think it is the biggest news going into, or the best announcement going into 2021, because how can it not be? Michael Jordan in NASCAR? Like, that's pretty damn cool. And then Bubba Wallace obviously being in the news a lot this season for the best reasons, of course, with his movement and being kind of like that social figure in the sport. He's been great with that for the Black Lives Matter movement and everything that he's done. We'll talk about him in this next category as well in terms of that movement as well. So congratulations, 2311 Racing. You are the best 2021 announcement. Hopefully you can deliver and not let us down next season. So move into our third award here, Kyle. A very cool one. The best paint scheme of 2020, or livery, if you're the European audience, how they want to distinguish the F1 livery side of things instead of calling it a paint scheme. So we've got really great nominees here. I mean, there's so many different options for it this season. So on Twitter, we've got the Kyle Busch M&M's Fudge Brownie paint scheme, the purple one that he ran on multiple occasions this season. Obviously, I'm a little bit biased. I love that paint scheme a lot. And then we've got Mercedes Anti-Racism, the black livery that they ran the entire season in light of the Black Lives Matter movement. So a very nice touch there for Mercedes. A very beautiful looking car as well. Obviously known as the Silver Arrows. They were anything but that. They were lethal this season in the black livery on many a week's time with Lewis Hamilton and Valtteri Bottas behind the wheel of their machines. Jimmy Johnson makes an appearance in the paint scheme of the year with his rally car with the white paint scheme shifting from the black base to the white base. We saw later in the season in that rally effort to make the playoffs. Ultimately, it fell short, but what a paint scheme that is. Definitely ordered that on pre-order coming in the new year. And then we also have Bubba Wallace's Black Lives Matter paint scheme that he ran at Martinsville. What a great effort that was by Richard Petty to allow him to run such a special paint scheme and just what that paint scheme really stands for. So this year has been obviously a huge catalyst for the Black Lives Matter movement, and Motorsports has been very much involved in that. So two of the nominations are involved with that tremendous movement that I'm sure everybody that is listening is in support of. And of course, we are in support of as well. So what have you okay. I have to actually read who won on the Twitter. What am I doing here? This is my first time hosting an award show, ladies and gentlemen, if you can't tell. But the winner on Twitter with 35 votes in total, but 40% of the vote, Mercedes Anti-Racism paint scheme or livery, wins the award on Twitter. So deservedly so. I think they did a great job with that paint scheme. So what are you thinking here for your nominees for the best paint scheme?
Yes, well, the Mercedes anti-racism scheme was one of my nominations. I've always been a massive fan of the Mercedes teal, but always thought that with the silver cars, it didn't really pop all that much. But when they switched over to the anti-racism livery, going with the all-black car, the teal just pops, and I think it looks absolutely gorgeous. So that was one of my three nominees. Also, in similar kind of theme to that, the Bubba Wallace Black Lives Matter card. The fact that in NASCAR or in motorsports in general, where things are so sponsorship heavy and dictated, that somebody in such a short amount of time was able to turn around this kind of scheme with this much importance is remarkable. And it's a scheme that looks pretty slick as well. I love the hood and the emblem that they have on that, the hashtag Black Lives Matter on the quarter panel and all. It looks really slick in addition to being a really important paint scheme. And finally, I did nominate the Jimmy Johnson rally white scheme as well. I'm a sucker for purple and pinks and that kind of stuff. It's one of the reasons why I love Racing Point, in addition to them being basically Canadian as well. But this scheme, man, with the black, it looks solid, but with the white, the yellow numbers pop, the ally, the gradient almost, how it goes from the dark purple to the light purple looks so good. And I kind of like the kind of boxy, kind of different paint scheme as well. It's not just kind of a generic scheme with a bunch of different colors of the sponsor added to it. So those were my 3 nominees. There was a lot of really good ones. We had to exclude the throwbacks as well, just so that we didn't just all fill it up with throwbacks.
There were going to be throwbacks.
It probably would have been that if that was the case, but there were so many more that I could have added in.
Yeah, as evident by our spreadsheet, which you can't see, I had a really tough time trimming this down. I have a couple of honorable mentions, but I'll go with my main nominees first. So we start off with one that was not featured on the Twitter poll, Ryan Blaney's beautiful paint scheme, the tribute to Kobe Bryant in California at Auto Club Speedway earlier this season, obviously in light of Kobe Bryant's tragic passing in the helicopter crash along with his daughter Gianna. It was just such a great touch. William Byron as well ran a special paint scheme that weekend, obviously the number 24 car, but I think Ryan Blaney nailed it with the kind of snake skin look on it, and the purple and gold, obviously paying tribute to the Los Angeles Lakers color scheme. So I thought that was just insanely well done. Definitely. And Ryan Blaney has a past relationship with Kobe Bryant as well. So I thought that was a really nice touch that Body Armor, who was sponsoring the car that weekend, allowed him to run it. Kyle Busch's Fudge Brownie. I mean, how can you not love the Fudge Brownie paint scheme? I mean,
it does look pretty good.
It looks, I mean, you want to eat an M&M Fudge Brownie, right? Like, that's basically what it comes down to. If you want to eat the sponsor or use the product, I think they've done their job. You can definitely bet that I ordered some of those, and they tasted pretty damn good. I'm not going to lie. I'm not sponsored by M&M's or anything, as much as I would have loved to.
I was going to say, as much as you wish you were.
Yeah, exactly. But that one makes an appearance in my best paint scheme. I love the purple look. I think it's just such a clean look. It's something different from what Kyle runs usually. He's gone through a whole bunch of different ones: red, green, yellow, blue, dark blue, light blue. I mean, he's had so many, and this is his first paint, like purple base. I thought they did a really nice job with it, where they placed the M&Ms on how they made it to contrast on each side of the car. That's always important. So very nicely done there by Joe Gibbs and M&Ms on that paint scheme. And then my final real nomination is the Bubba Wallace Black Lives Matter paint scheme from Martinsville, the spring race. How can you not nominate it? The Mercedes one, I loved it. It was definitely close. I don't even have it in my honorable mentions. That's how difficult this was. But it was, it's such a great livery, But I had to stick with my NASCAR theme here. I just felt like NASCAR deserves the paint scheme love, maybe a little bit more so than Formula One, because that's my roots. And I think paint schemes over there are just what make the car special, and they run it on a bi-weekly basis, or they just switch it up. So Formula One definitely had some great liveries this season. Mercedes probably leading the charge in that case, but a couple of other nice ones. I think McLaren's orange one is just ridiculously nice still. But my honorable mentions for this, I know Kyle doesn't have any, but I had to just make sure that I had some here. The Jimmy Johnson Rally paint scheme was definitely an honorable mention for myself. Alex Bowman's Planters paint scheme from the Martinsville second race, beautiful color scheme there. I'm always a sucker for like a navy blue or like a royal blue with a goldish color. That's just a beautiful paint scheme, as evident by my next 2 nominations here, as Eric Jones and his Irwin Tools. Christopher Bell's next season is going to probably be better than the one he just ran this season in Eric Jones. But I love that paint scheme. It's just such a nice one. And then Chase Elliott with his Kelly Blue Book paint scheme that he ran at Charlotte in the 300-mile race, I guess it was, after the Coke 600, the midweek race, and he won with that one. I love that paint scheme. They did a great job trying to refine that this season, switching it out from a white base that they've had even back to the 24 days, now to a full blue base, a navy blue base with the gold and the white and the silver. Oh, it's just so nice. So nice. But who is your winner for the best paint scheme of 2020?
Yeah, this was an extremely, extremely tough one to kind of come to a final decision on, but I think I'm going to agree with the people on this one, and I'm going to say the Mercedes anti-racism livery. I think that it does the perfect job of being a gorgeous-looking car and incorporating an important message with it. I love how the black primary makes the teal on the car pop as well. So big fan of it. I don't know if they're keeping it for next year yet or not. I think they might be, but I haven't seen that confirmed. I don't know yet. But I hope they keep it, because even though the silver goes with the Mercedes-Benz and all the branding there, I'm a massive fan of this car. So it gets my paint scheme livery of the year.
Yeah, that's a great pick. I'm not gonna lie. Even though I didn't even have it nominated, I still think that that's right up there with the winner of mine. Bubba Wallace's is great. Don't get me wrong. I love the message behind it, but based off of looks alone, I have to try and look at that a little bit more. So that's not going to be my winner, even though it could be a winner, definitely. Kyle Busch's fudge brownie paint scheme is going to fall short of my winner.
Okay.
As much as I would love to give it to Kyle, that would be his only basically award win of the season, but I can't do it. Ryan Blaney's Kobe Bryant tribute actually takes the cake for me this season. I thought it was just a beautiful paint scheme. Purple and gold go together. The Los Angeles Kings are bringing it back in their reverse retro jerseys for the upcoming NHL season. I think it's just a great LA look. It's a classic brand that they've established there. And I think they did a wonderful job there with Ryan Blaney and Team Penske doing that in tribute to the late Kobe Bryant. So I love that paint scheme. And I obviously I don't want to see it ever run again because it is for a special occasion. And obviously we would have liked to have not had that this season for obvious reasons. But I'm glad that they did some sort of effort to pay tribute to Kobe Bryant this season. So Ryan Blaney gets my best paint scheme of 2020. So we move on to the next award, which is the top prospect of the year. So this is who performed the best. That is a prospect in the minor leagues or so of motorsports, not in the top tier. This is Xfinity Series, Truck Series, F2, Indy Lights, even though they didn't run a season, but that's kind of the statistics, or like not the statistics, but the requirements for this award. So on Twitter, we asked you guys to vote, and we had Mick Schumacher, Sheldon Creed, Austin Cindric, and Chase Briscoe as the nominees. And overwhelmingly, Mick Schumacher wins this award with 52.5% of the vote. Chase Briscoe comes home in second with 25. The Xfinity Series champion, Austin Cindric, comes home in third. And then Sheldon Creed, I think, only got one vote, 2.5% of the vote for the Truck Series champion this season. So very cool stuff there. Mick Schumacher, obviously the F2 champion, moving up to Formula One next season, Kyle, in for Haas. But very cool nominations, and I know he's one of yours.
Yes, I think that he was probably the easiest nomination from the European side of things, being the Formula 2 champion. Wasn't necessarily the guy in terms of dominating race wins and dominating in terms of poles and everything. In fact, he didn't have a pole all season long, but he killed with consistency, and he was always in the conversation, in the top five, racing for podiums, finished the season with 10 podiums, just the 2 wins, but it was enough consistency to lock up the F2 championship and get the promotion to Formula One. And we know that over there with their championship formats, it's the consistency that's most important there. And Mick Schumacher showed that this season in his second year in F2. My other 2 nominations both came from the Xfinity Series, and they were the 2 guys that were battling most often for race wins and championships, and that was Chase Briscoe and Austin Cindric. I'll start with Chase Briscoe. He's the one getting the jump to the Cup Series for next year on a full-time basis. He had the wins advantage, but didn't show up as well in the championship race, of course, as Cindric won that one. But season long, he maybe had the edge there. And then you look at Cindric, 6 wins versus Briscoe's 9 on the season, but won the important race there at the end of the year in the championship. So 3 deserving nominees, 3 very different nominees as well. And I had a bit of a tough time coming to a decision on this one. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, this was a tough one for me as well. Very similar line of thinking for myself on this one as well, with having 2 of the 3 being the same, that being Austin Cindric and Mick Schumacher. And then my exception to Kyle's list was Sheldon Creed, as nominated on Twitter. Didn't turn out the greatest for him in terms of the results on that, but I thought he did a great job this season winning the Truck Series championship. Probably shouldn't have won the Truck Series championship, in all honesty, without that late caution. There were 3 laps to go. That was Brett Moffitt's for the taking. But Sheldon Creed had an amazing restart there, pulled the strategy off late, coming to get fresh tires, and then had a phenomenal restart, like I said, to go from, I think it was 9th to 1st in 2 laps. So showed his prowess there with fresh tires and taking the lead there when it mattered most. Mick Schumacher, as Kyle said, the F2 champion, and killed on consistency. He was very much, for the F2 champions, we've seen a lot of wins for the champion, but that wasn't the case for Schumacher this season. He was just so consistent. He never really put a foot wrong. And although it wasn't the greatest end of the season for the Bahrain races and the Sakir races, he did a great job overall this entire season to bring it home. And he showed that he is capable and worthy of a Formula One drive next season. And Austin Cindric, what a great drive by him in the season finale there for Team Penske. The entire season, he was the regular season consistently champion over Chase Briscoe, even though he had the wins, did Briscoe. Cindric was just killed on consistency, very similar to Schumacher a little bit, even though he got a little bit more wins on the year. So great nominees there for this category, but who is your top prospect of 2020?
Yeah, this, again, as I said, this was a tough one to come to a decision on because I could hear an argument for all three of mine plus Sheldon Creed on your side. But for me, Mick Schumacher, did he win F2? Yes, but he didn't have the dominating win totals that some of the other Formula 2 champions have had. Granted, he did have a tougher field than most of those as well, but I feel like needed a couple more wins in there to really break through as the top prospect for me. So then it came down to Briscoe versus Cindric. And for me, you got to factor in Briscoe's age a little bit, even though he does have relative inexperience to the rest of the field. He is 26. So for me, my top prospect of the year is Austin Cindric. He went out, won the Xfinity Series championship, showed that he's ready to compete on ovals as well, in addition to the road courses, which he dominates on most of the time. So for me, Cindric showed this year that he's got legitimate potential to be a top driver because of his prowess on the road courses. The ovals are starting to come this year as well, as we saw with a few wins there this season, including the season finale in which he won the championship. And he's still pretty young as well. He's only 22. He's going to make his Cup Series debut next season, run a couple races there for Penske as an extra car, and then go into the season following as a Wood Brothers driver. So for me, Austin Cindric is the top prospect for 2020.
He is mine as well. Austin Cindric wins overwhelmingly for me the top, top prospect of the season. Just coming into this season, I wasn't 100% sold on Cindric. And, back to his Roush Fenway days when he drove the 60 car on a part-time basis, he wrecked it a lot. The infamous 60 car that could not finish a race, it seemed. Shared that ride with Chase Briscoe at one point as well. Yeah. So it's just crazy to think the storylines for both of those guys. I didn't have Briscoe nominated just because of his age being that little bit older. So I went away from that. But Cindric being 22 years of age, an Xfinity Series champion, already having a Cup Series ride lined up for 2022 in the Wood Brothers to replace Matt Benedetto. I think he's sold me now. Austin Cindric has proven to me that he is worthy of a top-level ride, and only one more year in Xfinity Series is only going to do him great things. Really sold me this year, like I said. I wasn't that high on him. I thought he was too aggressive at times, and he's really matured this season to be an Xfinity Series champion. Does take that. You don't just fluke into something like that. He was kind of second best to Chase Briscoe. Briscoe had the storylines, but Cindric was underwhelming, or not under the radar, that this season that he would just get these wins. He had that great summer patch where he won 5 out of 6 races, had a slow bit of a playoffs, was almost eliminated at one point in time, but then came and showed up in the championship finale when it mattered most, showed his prowess, got that late restart, and passed Justin Allgaier there to win the Xfinity Series champion. So I had no doubt in my mind. Mick Schumacher, great season, don't get me wrong, going up to Formula One next season, but I needed to see a little bit more wins out of Schumacher to get this crown of top prospect. So Austin Cindric takes the cake for me on that category. So another same there, Kyle, with Austin Cindric. So I think that was I think a lot of people will think that way, to be honest. He just seemed like he was just so consistent this season, and being a champion at the end of things and having a ride secured, not only not for next season, running some part-time Cup Series races next year, but then having a full-time ride. It's very hard to argue against Austin Cindric's 2020 campaign. We move into the biggest disappointment of 2020. Kyle's going to have some fun with this one, and he's got all the right to. But before we get into his nominees, we'll take a look at the Twitter nominees before that. Alexander Albon is on a nominee for the biggest disappointment of 2020. I mean, this sucks that we all nominated him after the news kind of broke, I guess. that he's not going to be in Formula One next season, but that does show the expectations were so high for Alexander Albon, and he did not deliver, and he's going to be out of a Formula One seat next season as a result of that. Kyle Busch, the 2019 Cup Series champion, just did not have a good season. That's basically how you can put it. Got a win there late in the season at Texas Motor Speedway in the third to last race of the season that was ran on a Wednesday. Let's not forget about that. But other than that, there was no real bright spot for Kyle Busch this season, losing his crew chief next season with Adam Stevens. They've won 2 Cup Series championships together. Obviously, very emotional topic for myself. So, Kyle Busch, I can understand why he's nominated on this list. Joe Gibbs Racing as well, having Denny Hamlin being the leader of that organization this season with the 7 wins. But other than that, they had 2 wins combined with the rest of the 3 drivers, with Martin Truex Jr., Kyle Busch, and Eric Jones not getting any wins this season. So disappointing year for Joe Gibbs Racing after their record-breaking season in 2019. And then Alexander Rossi, we expect this guy to be in contention for the championships year in and year out, and it was anything but that this season. Had some inconsistencies this season, and finishing 9th in the championship as well is not going to help his efforts. So we're expecting a huge bounce-back season for Alexander Rossi next season, but 2020 was definitely not his year. So the winner of the biggest disappointment it's not an award you really want to win, but for the biggest disappointment of 2020 as voted by the fans, Alexander Albon with 42.1% of the vote. It was very, very close between himself and Alexander Rossi. Rossi gets 36.8% of the vote. Kyle Busch there in 3rd, and Joe Gibbs Racing there in 4th place on Twitter. So I don't want to say congratulations to Alexander Albon on that. I know he's going through a bit of a tough time right now, and it's unfortunate that he didn't. His year his full year in Red Bull did not really turn out to be what he had hoped, or what we had all hoped for him this season. So, who have you got for the biggest disappointment for your nominees of 2020?
Yes, my short list of 3 begins with Kyle Busch as the defending Cup Series champion. Fell pretty flat this year. Went from 5 wins last year to 1 this year. First in the championship to 8th, and then an 8.9 average finish to 13.8. One of the bigger drop-offs from last year to this year in the Cup Series. Second, on my short list here, Alexander Rossi, as you mentioned there, really disappointing year from him, going from 3rd to 9th in the championship, 2 wins to 0, his first winless year in his IndyCar career with Andretti there. And it wasn't just bad luck or anything as well. He made quite a few mistakes as well. So we'll look for him to get back on track next year, but this year was definitely a disappointing one. And finally, for me, went a little bit different for the last one, went with Ferrari in Formula One, going from 2nd in the Constructors all the way down to 6th. Was a massive, massive disappointment in that regard. You can probably put a lot of the blame to the engine stuff that went on with the FIA to begin the year, and that whole ordeal. We don't know how much of that really went into how the car performed, but what we do know is that they went from a pretty firm 2nd in the Constructors all the way down to 6th, and lost out to some cars that they should have handedly beat if they were anywhere close to what they were in 2019. So those are my 3 nominees for biggest disappointment of 2020. There were a couple other ones that I had on my short list, one of which you definitely have on yours, but despite all the highs and whatnot that we had this year, there were definitely some people that still experienced some pretty bad lows.
Yeah, and some unexpected names at that, that underperformed this season. Obviously, a couple you mentioned there with Alexander Rossi and Kyle Busch. I had Alexander Albon as a huge disappointment for myself this season. He showed some signs, some glimpses of really great pace last season when he filled in halfway through the season for Pierre Gasly. And then this season, it was just never really there. It started off in Austria, as we talked about last episode, where we kind of dissected Albon's season a little bit further, so I won't get into it too much. But it started off with the Austrian Grand Prix and F1's return to action. Gets spun by Lewis Hamilton there, was in contention for maybe even a win at that point to start off the season. What a confidence booster that would have been for the young Thai Brit driver. And it never really got better from there. Got a couple podiums, his first podiums in Formula One, 2 podiums at that, late in the season. And after that, I mean, when you have Sergio Perez, who's going to be on the sidelines, that was looking to be on the sidelines for next season, and you had Alexander Albon underperforming. Red Bull had a very competitive car this season, obviously second best to Mercedes, but Verstappen showed that it is capable of winning races, even in the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix there. And then Alexander Albon was nowhere near the pace on the Saturdays and the Sundays compared to his teammate there in Max Verstappen. So that was a big disappointment for me. Joe Gibbs Racing was my nomination. I couldn't be too harsh to put it all on Kyle Busch this season. I couldn't do that for myself. I couldn't do that for my actual mental health. But I think Martin Truex Jr. and Eric Jones did not show me much this season in terms of, I think Joe Gibbs Racing as a whole was just down in performance. When I look at how great they were in 2019, the drop-off this season was just monumental. And that is not something we see from Joe Gibbs Racing very often, very much off from their recent years of performance. Denny Hamlin, obviously a bright spot with 7 wins this season, but slowed down in the playoffs, had 2 super speedway wins. So maybe you look at that, only 5 wins besides that, and was nowhere in the championship race when it mattered most. Was head-to-head with Kevin Harvick for the majority of the season, but really in the last 12 weeks or so, Hamlin fell off, and that entire organization couldn't really pick up the slack. So disappointing there from Joe Gibbs Racing as a whole, as they carry the Toyota banner over there in the Cup Series. And when they're not performing, it definitely makes it more of a one-horse race with Kevin Harvick up front with the Fords. And then Chevrolet was kind of second, even though they won the Cup Series championship. And then my third one is a little bit off the board. I was very disappointed that NASCAR did not have any practice or qualifying, and their stupid qualifying draw format that they had and their formula that they had for this season. When you look at other motorsports, they were able to run the entire weekend's practice, qualifying, and the race. NASCAR did not do that, unfortunately, and I think that's a huge factor for me on how the season went. I only rated, I think, a 6 or 6.5 out of 10 on the season when we did our race or our year in review or the grade of the season, whatever it was, in our championship recap. And I think that had a lot to do with it, having no practice, no qualifying, the same faces up front based off of their point situation. Some guys having to claw their way from the back because of just a poor performance the week prior or something like that. They don't get a fresh start coming into the next weekend. How I've grown up watching NASCAR, it is anything but that. You go up there on the Saturday or the Friday in qualifying, you try and run it up fastest lap as you can and set your pole position or set your position for the Sunday race or Saturday night, whatever it is, even a Wednesday race this season. But I just thought that was a huge element that was missing from the sport this season, and it really lacked, and it showed in the actual race itself. So those are my 3 nominees. Totally different from Kyle's. I think that might be the only one that we have 3 entirely different ones this season. So who have you got for the biggest disappointment of 2020?
Yeah, so when I look at it here, Ferrari had such a huge drop-off, but the tie goes directly to the whole FIA situation with their engines. Even still, massive disappointment, but you can kind of look and maybe that's the reason why. Alexander Rossi, shortened season for IndyCar as well. It was just kind of a weird season overall, extremely disappointing. He was a close number 2 for me, but the easy one for me, biggest disappointment. I'm sorry, but it's Kyle Busch, and for me, it's not even all that close. He won the championship last year. He had a bit of a rough end of the season, but then bounced back, obviously winning the championship. But there were some worrying signs there come the end of the season. And this year, it was basically worst case scenario, just the 1 win, barely keeping that win streak alive. And when you look at the stats, they don't lie. 5 wins to 1, first to 8th, 8.9 average finish to 13.8. And you can say Joe Gibbs Racing was worse overall, and they definitely took a step back in some regards. But the main reason that their stats as a whole come down is Kyle Busch's lack of performance this year. Denny Hamlin won more races this year than he did the year previous. Martin Truex Jr. lost arguably the best crew chief in the sport in Cole Pearn, and Eric Jones has been the 4th driver there the entire time. So for me, Kyle Busch is the most disappointing driver for this season, just because going into this year, these are supposed to be his prime years. He's supposed to be contending for the championships, and we didn't see that this year.
Oh, brother. I hate that. Yeah, I mean, I disagree.
You know what? Maybe he was just sandbagging so we can win bounce back driver next year.
Yeah, I mean, I hope that's the case, but Yeah, I mean, I disagree with that. I understand it, how it was disappointing. I mean, I was disappointed more than anybody, to be honest. But, I mean, I'm not going to put it entirely on Kyle Busch. I can see Joe Gibbs Racing as a whole really weren't there this season compared to what we've seen, as I mentioned earlier. But my biggest disappointment for the season was Alexander Albon. He gets the award for, I mean, I hate to say that it's an award. You don't really want this. But Alexander Albon, I thought he had a bright future in this sport and still does. Don't get me wrong.
Yes.
But for the expectations that were put on him, the glimpses that he showed at then Toro Rosso when he was racing for them, and then moving up to Red Bull, showed some very consistent signs late in the season there, opened the door for Lewis Hamilton there at Brazil to miss out on his first F1 podium there, bounce back, it seemed, in the Austrian Grand Prix to have the same thing basically happen again. So I think that's really what happened with Albon. It kind of got into his mind a little bit, messed with him, and then he never really mentally recovered from there. It's just so brutal to put that on somebody, but when you lose a seat like this, when it seemed like it was still yours for the taking up until the final week, two weekends of the season, to then lose out because the guy that you're competing against for that seat wins a race and passes you basically to go up through the entire field after spinning on the first lap. I think Albon needs to, I think he has to just sit down with himself, realize what's happened this season, and then just kind of bounce back next season, make Red Bull as strong as he can from the reserve role, and then hopefully in 2022 we see him back on the grid. But to have the second best car on the grid, never be close to Verstappen at all this season, the qualifying battle 17-0, I mean, that should not happen at a top-tier team like Red Bull. And then the racing itself, he showed some glimpses where he can make some overtakes at times, but that was usually when there was a lot of carnage in the races. It was never really when the full field was there. When he was caught back in traffic, never was able to move up through the field like the Red Bull should. And if Verstappen was in that same situation, he would fly through the field, and that was proved this entire season. So Alexander Albon gets the most disappointing driver of the year, or just the biggest disappointment of the year of 2020. So that's an unfortunate category. That's probably like the only low category of the year.
Yeah,
but
it's the only somewhat negative
lowlights.
one. But yeah, it was important to hit on. But those drivers now are eligible for this next award that we have.
Yes, they are, and that is going to be the best bounce back season. So who had a poor 2019 and who recovered in 2020? So on Twitter, we have the polls having Austin Dillon with the win at Texas Motor Speedway this season to get himself into the playoffs. RCR with a huge recovery season, or even, I mean, over the past like 3 seasons, they've been kind of bad. So RCR taking a massive step forward this season. Austin Dillon was at the head of that with the race win. An RCR 1-2 finish there at Texas. Let's not forget about Tyler Reddick putting in a really good performance in that race as well. But Austin Dillon making it to the round of 12 in the playoffs as well, defying all the odds. Really solid season after underperforming, to say the least, for his grandfather of Richard Childress. Scott Dixon going from 4th in the championship standings in 2019, very much off the pace from the overall winner, Joseph Newgarden, all the way up to winning the championship over Joseph Newgarden this season in 2020. Pierre Gasly getting demoted from Red Bull halfway through the season in 2019 to a race winner this season for AlphaTauri at Monza. What a great story that was for Pierre Gasly. And then Brad Keselowski, a bit of a disappointing 2019 season where he was out in the round of 12 of the playoffs, but then he recovers here in 2020 to make it to the championship 4 to finish second to the overall champion in Chase Elliott. So Pierre Gasly wins this award on social media with the overwhelming vote of 56.8%. Scott Dixon there in second with 35.1%. Austin Dillon, the Cup Series guys did not get much love in this category, as they have 5.4% in Austin Dillon and then only 1 vote for Brad Keselowski with 2.7% of the votes. So congratulations to Pierre Gasly. You are the Twitter winner of this award. Kyle, who have you got for the best bounce back season?
Yes, I'll begin with Austin Dillon there, as you mentioned in kind of your introduction. A fantastic bounce back season for them and RCR, going from 21st in the standings for Austin Dillon there in 2019 all the way up to 11th and making the second round on pace. In that first round, he didn't fluke into some of those results. He legitimately had pace. And yeah, as you mentioned there, Richmond, he could have gone out and won the thing. Average finish going from 19.5 to 16.2, so over 3 positions better. Very rare you see kind of that kind of improvement for anybody in a single season. So Austin Dillon, a big bounce back for him. When it was looking like RCR may have to maybe get rid of him after 2019 if they were going to get back to any kind of contention, this year he showed that wasn't the case. Number 2 for me, I nominated Brad Keselowski. Kind of similar to Scott Dixon in somebody who was still good, but really found that same next gear in 2020. Last year, finished 8th in the standings. This past year, obviously finished 2nd, and if not for a bad pit stop, or multiple, I should say, maybe would have won the championship. A fantastic year for him. Average finish going from 12.9 to 10.1 as well. So basically 3 positions as well for him, which is much harder to do when you're finishing 10th, 11th, 12th in terms of average finish to improve that much. So a fantastic year for Brad Keselowski. And finally, Pierre Gasly. Just everything that he went through in 2019, from battling with Red Bull and being disappointing there, losing his seat, losing his best friend, finishing the year with Toro Rosso, looking pretty good, having the rebrand to AlphaTauri, coming into this year and just absolutely lighting the world on fire. One of the most consistent drivers, consistently outperforming that car, especially early on in the season. Obviously the highlight, winning Monza, and overall at the end of the season, having the best average finish for an entire season for an AlphaTauri or Toro Rosso driver in history. Very, very impressive drive from him this season. So he is my 3rd nominee for Best Bounce Back.
Yeah, I can agree with that. They were Pierre Gasly. I was a little bit disappointed, or not disappointed, that's the wrong word, but a bit surprised, I guess, by the Brad Keselowski nominee for yourself. I didn't really look at him as a bounce back candidate, but after looking at the numbers a little bit closer,
another thing
I
as
can
well
understand it.
That I forgot to mention there is going into the season, we kind of thought that Keselowski would have his last year with Penske being this year. We saw at the beginning of the year the Jeremy Bollins kind of change around. We thought that he was the 3rd driver out of that situation. And by the end of the year, he re-signs obviously just a 1-year extension, but completely showed everybody wrong that Jeremy Bollins was some terrible crew chief that couldn't get it done. He showed this year that wasn't true, because he probably should have won the championship this year based off of their performance outside of that pit stop.
I would have had my championship prediction right if he'd done it. Oh God, I still can't believe that
what is it? 0 for 6 or something like that at this point. So
yeah, for the last 2 years for both of us, we've been pretty shocking to say the least in our championship predictions, but that's a little bit of a different story. We could give the best. That's probably the biggest disappointment of the year, to be honest, for me, that we didn't get any of those right in our predictions. But we were in contention there for the end. We had guys that were leading late in the championship race, but didn't end up getting the end result there. But for my really much. So for my best bounce back season nominees, I've got Austin Dillon as well. How can you not? I mean, going from a winless 2019 season to having a win this season and making the playoffs, making it to the round of 12, something that we didn't predict in our playoff predictions video. We had him out in the round of 16. Don't even talk to us about playoff predictions anymore, because I mean, we are just so out to lunch.
Hey, our final fours were pretty good.
Out to toast, as Kyle likes to say. We were out to toast. I'm kidding. Yeah, I mean, they weren't too bad, but we still didn't get any right. My second bounce back candidate for this season, Racing Point Formula One team. I was very, very impressed with them this season, going from 7th in the Constructors last season all the way up to 4th this season, but should have probably got 3rd without some mechanical problems there to end the season there with Perez's runnings there. But I think they had the 3rd best car, basically copying the 2019 Mercedes, and they did a great job this season. Nico Hülkenberg stepping in when he needed to, and then he performed when he came into that car. Lance Stroll getting a pole this season, and the Turkish Grand Prix, Sergio Perez, a race-winning car this season. I think they were very impressive, and they should have probably got 3rd in the Constructors, but McLaren was just a bit too consistent as the season wound down when Racing Point made the mistakes, but they were very, very solid for me this year. And then Scott Dixon is my final nominee for the best bounce back candidate of the season. Went from a bit of a disappointing 2019 season for sure, but then started out the season very, very strongly with 4 consecutive wins to start IndyCar's return to play, I guess, return to race season. So very, very solid from Scott Dixon this year. I think it was first three, and then 4 of the first 5. I think that's probably, I don't think he won 4 in a row. But yeah, Scott Dixon, and he is my 3rd bounce back nominee for this year. But who is your winner for the best bounce back driver of the season?
Yeah, Brad Keselowski, he looked good. Obviously, this season was strong, bouncing back, but I think 8th to 2nd, it deserves recognition, but I don't know if that's enough of a down to a high to really give him best bounce back. Similarly for Austin Dillon, he was pretty poor the year previous, got back up to a solid mark, but just the change there from really poor to still mid-pack. He was close for me, but at the end, it had to be Pierre Gasly for me. The fact that he won his first Grand Prix, was able to hold off a McLaren in that situation, and Carlos Sainz, who was hard charging, had the best season in AlphaTauri / Toro Rosso history, and did it all under the circumstances of what the past year plus has been for him. Extremely, extremely impressed with Pierre Gasly. For a lot of people, for a lot of the season, he was their driver of the year. I think Hamilton finished off the year too strong. Perez as well got in that conversation as well, but he's a top 3 candidate for sure. He got A+ from both of us in our driver grades at the end of the season. And so for me, Pierre Gasly gets the best bounce back award.
Yeah, I didn't have him nominated because I do think his 2019 season was solid. I don't know if he blew me away this season. Obviously with the win, that's incredible. But I think he still had a pretty solid 2019 season to where I couldn't really put him, but you do make a good case for him to win this award. Austin Dillon, like you said, to go from disappointing to lackluster-ish to mid-pack, getting into the playoffs. I know that's a great accomplishment for RCR, but I can't put him as my bounce back driver of the year. Scott Dixon, very similarly, I know wins the championship, but 4th in the drivers' championship is not too bad in all honesty for someone like Scott Dixon. You know, top 4, top 5 in the championship is pretty solid. But my winner for the best bounce back season is Racing Point F1 team. I thought they did a masterful job this season, because they are probably the nucleus of the entire silly season, with Sebastian Vettel coming into that team, wanting to come to Racing Point, then therefore making the Sergio Perez change. Then Perez has to jump ship to Red Bull, then going from 7th to 4th in the Constructors' Championship with an incredible season. Race-winning caliber driving from both of their drivers this season. Lance Stroll, up until the late kind of problems in the Turkish Grand Prix, seemed like he had that race well within his reach. Didn't end up getting that, but Sergio Perez goes from last to first in the Sakir Grand Prix and wins the race. Very impressive stuff from Racing Point this season. When it all started back out in Austria earlier this year, they seemed like they were a team that was very capable of winning races, as we saw with Nico Hülkenberg qualifying that car 3rd over the likes of Max Verstappen this season. They were so consistent until that final couple of races. Understandably, some reliability issues will arise as the season unfolds, but Racing Point did enough for me this season to say that they are going to be someone to be reckoning with in the future, getting some very valuable dollars for that team that is very low on funding. Even though they may not look like it, they are underfunded compared to a lot of these teams. They just do really well with the money that they do have on that car, and they've taken that Pink Panther for the final time for a long time, because they're going over to Aston Martin next season. They took it in a very great farewell season, so they get the best bounce back season award from me. So we move into a very special category here, Kyle. The Canadian Driver of the Year Award.
Yes.
We have some very special shout-outs for this one. It got a lot of attention on social media, the most voted one by far, 89 votes. But we have some shout-outs to give. The DiFrancesco family, from Devlin DiFrancesco, a nominee on Twitter, and then also his father, Andy DiFrancesco, for liking our post, first off, and then also asking people that they know to vote on the post as well. Very special to us, you know, as two sport media kids trying to get into the industry in a very high, I guess, level. This was very cool. For myself, I don't know, you can probably speak to it as well, Kyle. This was, anytime that we get national attention from, big names in the racing scene to like our stuff is very, very special and very, very cool. Also, Jason Hathaway and the EHR Team 3 Orange for liking our posts. Very much appreciated, excuse me. And they really help get the boosting of the numbers on our polls as well. So very, very thankful for that. But I'll let you add something onto that as well.
Yeah, no, anytime you can get any kind of recognition or interaction with the people that you're nominating for awards is very cool. And obviously, this is one of the awards that really means a lot to us, just being Canadians. And it was a bit of a down year for Canadian drivers, just given that James Hinchcliffe didn't have a full-time drive. Stuart Friesen had a bit of a drop in performance in the truck series. And Nicholas Latifi had a pretty rough rookie season. So it was maybe a down year for Canadian drivers as a whole, but there were still quite a few bright spots, and some of those, such as Devlin DeFrancesco in his season in Indy Pro 2000 and Jason Hathaway winning the Pinty series as well. And having them interact with the post and seeing if they can garner some votes as well was really cool to see.
Yeah, very, very cool. And it kind of showed in the actual results of it. But let's take a look at who the nominees were first before we announce the winner on social media for the Canadian Driver of the Year. Devlin DeFrancesco, obviously, as Kyle mentioned, finishing second in the Indy Pro 2000 series. And then Jason Hathaway winning the Pinty series. Kind of a forgotten series this year, just based off of the lack of races, but still a champion nonetheless for Jason Hathaway. Rafael Lessard getting that win at Talladega for Kyle Busch Motorsports. Obviously no longer with the team, going over to GMS on most likely a part-time basis in 2021, but showed some glimpses here and there throughout the season that Rafael Lessard could be a name in this sport for many, many years to come. And then Lance Stroll, the Canadian in Formula One for Racing Point, getting that first career pole at the Turkish Grand Prix, and had a very good season up until that couple of stints there where he had some bad luck with some reliability issues, and then also some some punctures and whatnot. Just a kind of a rough stretch there in the middle of the season for Lance Stroll, but he got a couple of podiums out of it as well. Very solid season for him, and kind of an emergent season for Lance Stroll. He kind of beat out Sergio Perez for that ride. Obviously, with Lawrence Stroll having a massive part in that team, you can understand why he's still there. But he did show that he's more than just his father's money. He does have a lot of talent behind the wheel of a Formula One car. So those are the four nominees for the Twitter side of things. And Devlin DeFrancesco, in large part to his social media presence, wins the award overwhelmingly with 57.3% of the vote. Lance Stroll comes home second with 27%. Jason Hathaway there with 11.2%. And then Rafael Lessard rounds it out with 4.5% of the vote. So congratulations to Devlin DeFrancesco and the DeFrancesco family for winning this award. We don't have anything for you, but hopefully you can take that with a pat on the back and take that into the offseason and have a successful 2021 campaign. Who have you got for your nominees for the Canadian Driver of the Year?
Yes, I was the one to nominate Devlin DeFrancesco for the Canadian Driver of the Year award. 2 wins and a second-place finish in Indy Pro 2000. Very, very strong season for DeFrancesco there, looking to kind of build up his career, looking like he's going to go the IndyCar route versus overseas. Has gone a little bit back and forth, but now it's firmly in North America, a very, very strong season in Indy Pro 2000. The third tier of the ladder system in IndyCar. Second for me, Rafael Lessard became the 5th Canadian driver to win in NASCAR's Top 3 Series, doing so at Talladega in pretty dramatic fashion, I'll say. Unfortunate over the entire season, wasn't able to really get his footing just given the circumstances of the NASCAR season, but hopefully we'll see him kind of rebound next year with GMS and another top team there. And then finally, Lance Stroll, of course, 2 podiums, the first pole for a Canadian since Jacques Villeneuve in 1997. Very, very strong season from him. Obviously, the second half of the season a bit disappointing, but that first half was fantastic. So Lance Stroll is the 3rd nominee for me for Canadian Driver of the Year.
Yep, I follow a very similar line of thinking for a lot of it. Devlin DeFrancesco, great nominee there. I went with Jason Hathaway as one of mine, so very solid season from him in the NASCAR Pinty Series. Rafael Lessard obviously getting that win was very, very impressive. Also liked our social media post, the graphic that I made on Instagram, so a little bit of, brownie points with me there, Raphael. But and then Lance Stroll was the last nominee for myself. I mean, that's pretty much he was the Canadian guy in Formula One. Not to try and be too harsh on Nicholas Latifi, but there was nothing really to nominate him on this season. A couple of P11s, but nonetheless, Lance Stroll was just far superior than him in that series this season. So great nominees here for the Canadian Driver of the Year. Hopefully we can see a little bit of a more better performance out of Canadian drivers next season. But who do you have winning the award for 2020, Kyle?
Yeah, so for me, you look at the nominees here, and you have DeFrancesco, who had a very strong season in terms of season-long performance, finishing second in his series, but it was a lower-tier series, being the third tier in kind of the ladder system in IndyCar. Rafael Lessard, he had the win at Talladega, put his name alongside the other 4 Canadian drivers to win in NASCAR's top 3 ranks, but the season as a whole was pretty disappointing. So for me, this one was pretty easy. It's got to be Lance Stroll as Canadian Driver of the Year. 2 podium finishes this season, the first pole for a Canadian, as I mentioned, since Villeneuve in 1997 in that season finale. Stroll took his performance to another level this year. Before that, he had been known as kind of a pay driver who'd paid his way into a seat and didn't deserve it. But this year he showed, in addition to the promise that he has with his young age, that he deserves a Formula One seat currently. And whether his dad was rich or if his dad had no money at all, he was very impressive this year to me. Still wasn't as good as Perez, but you wouldn't expect him to be so. He's a young developing driver. And this year he showed enough progress to the point where you can look at it and genuinely say, yes, they should keep Stroll over Perez. Obviously, in terms of one season performance, no, you would keep Perez over Stroll. But long-term, Lance Stroll is still a very, very good prospect here. Let's not forget, it was only a few seasons ago that he dominated, I believe it was, an F3 against some names that are up in the ranks now as top prospects as well. So he kind of had his name disparaged a little bit because he paid his way into Formula One, got in early, and did so with a bad Williams team and kind of hurt his reputation there. But I think that he's rebuilt it enough to the point where the larger fan base is saying, this guy's legit. And for that, in the performance this season, he's my Canadian Driver of the Year.
Why are we always in agreement on something like this? I've got Lance Stroll winning the Canadian Driver of the Year award as well. I think it's pretty much a no-brainer. Not to be disrespectful to the other nominees, of course, they're all had a great season in their own rights, but Lance Stroll on the highest level of racing in the world in Formula One, taking Racing Point to that next level as well, partnering Sergio Perez, obviously to a 1A, 1B kind of situation to a lot of respects. Stroll was right there with Perez on a lot of occasions, had the missing race with COVID-19, and still came back very, very strongly after that. Got the 2 podiums, as Kyle said, the pole position. I mean, he checked all the boxes this season, some boxes that we weren't really anticipating him to check even going into this season. So I think he is very much deserving of that award, and to stay with Aston Martin, an up-and-coming team, partnering a 4-time world champion in Sebastian Vettel is going to be a huge learning opportunity for someone like Stroll, and his career can only get better from here with having Vettel kind of as his right-hand man to teach him stuff and to learn from somebody as talented as him. So Lance Stroll wins this award overwhelmingly for me. I know DeFrancesco wins the Twitter award, but Lance Stroll, I think, gets it just based off of his performance this season in the top flight of Formula One. So we move on to another category here, Kyle, in the Rookie of the Year award. Great award here. We had some great nominees. Some ones that I would have predicted at the beginning of the season that are not on this list based off of the lack of performance, namely Christopher Bell. The actual Cup Series Rookie of the Season, Cole Custer, is not on this list as well for either of our nominees, and on Twitter as well. But let's take a look at what we had on Twitter. Zane Smith, a very impressive rookie campaign in the NASCAR Truck Series. I'm not even going to say the whole name because that is in the past now. It is the NASCAR Truck Series to me. I don't care. Zane Smith, though, finishing second in the championship. Very, very solid from him. Was a bright spot this season for NASCAR. So telling his story a little bit after winning at Michigan earlier this year, telling that he didn't come from much, and he's just made it to this point based off of his personality and his driving ability. And I think that was very evident throughout the season. Very solid rookie campaign for Zane Smith for GMS this season in the trucks. Tyler Reddick, I think blew a lot of us away with his performance. I mean, it's kind of crazy to think that the two-time defending Xfinity Series champion comes out of the Cup Series and impresses. You'd think we wouldn't be as surprised as maybe we were. But RCR taking that car to the next level, and Tyler Reddick just elevating his game. Just despite missing the playoffs, I know he didn't win a race, but finishing second to Austin Dillon, like I said earlier, and had some bright performances there. Showed he's a masterful driver at Homestead, Miami, finishing fourth in that race in his Cup Series debut earlier this season for that track. Yuki Tsunoda obviously had an incredible F2 campaign in his rookie season, coming up to Formula One next season for AlphaTauri, finishing third, only 15 points behind Mick Schumacher, the overall champion in F2. Really solid there from Yuki Tsunoda, showing pace week in and week out, and ended the season strong with a first and a second in the feature and sprint race. And then Rinus VeeKay on the IndyCar side of things rounds out the nominees for the Rookie of the Year award for the Motorsports Award Show. So who did you guys vote for to win the Rookie of the Year award? Zane Smith there with 18.5% of the vote, Tyler Reddick 11.1% of the vote. But then it came down to Yuki Tsunoda and Rinus VeeKay for the overall prize, and Rinus VeeKay ends up taking that award with 40.7% of the vote, Yuki Tsunoda with 29.6%. So congratulations to Rinus VeeKay on a very well-deserved effort this season at IndyCar. Proved a lot of people wrong, I think, coming into this season, and was a very solid contender week in and week out. Had some bright moments there, finishing top 5 a couple of times, top 10 most of the time as well. So he wins the Rookie of the Year on Twitter. But who have you got for your nominees for the Rookie of the Year award, Kyle?
Yeah, for me, number one nominee here, Tyler Reddick. Very, very strong Rookie of the Year campaign. If it was a vote for NASCAR and not just based off of where you finish, who's highest in points, I think that Tyler Reddick is your Rookie of the Year. He's not, because he didn't win a race, and so Cole Custer got it. But on consistency, Tyler Reddick was the best rookie in the Cup Series this year. Number two for me, Yuki Tsunoda. Had a fantastic season in F2, coming off of a solid but nothing spectacular season in Formula 3. Makes the jump up regardless to F2 and showed very, very well. 3 wins, which was actually more than Mick Schumacher. Didn't have necessarily the consistency, but was very, very strong in the feature races primarily. And so he's very deserving of the bump up to Formula 1 to AlphaTauri. Excited to see how that goes alongside Pierre Gasly next year. But he's definitely one of the Rookies of the Year in motorsports. And finally, Rinus VeeKay as well. He was the Rookie of the Year on the IndyCar side of things. Alex Palou is the one that's getting the jump up in equipment, going up to Chip Ganassi Racing there to replace Felix Rosenqvist. But Rinus VeeKay was the one who actually finished higher this season in the standings. And it's mainly the road course prowess that he showed. Had some struggles on the ovals, but actually had some good results at Gateway, I should say. But the main results for him were on the ovals, and the big thing was that third place finish, getting on the podium in one of those road course races at Indianapolis. So he's the third nominee for me, was the fan choice, but you'll have to wait and see what I go with.
I've got Yuki Tsunoda as one of my nominees for this one. How can you not? An incredible F2 campaign. Zane Smith really shocked me this season with how well he performed. I love the guy. Going to be a fan favorite, I'm sure, here in no time. I think he won the most popular driver award in the Truck Series as well, if I'm not mistaken. Congratulations. Oh, also, a huge shout out to Zane Smith for also liking our social media post as well. So he gets a little bit of brownie points as well for that. And then Rinus VeeKay as well for myself. IndyCar Rookie of the Year, like Kyle said, had some stand-up performances and finished 14th in the overall standings this season. So solid stuff there from him. But who is your winner for the Rookie of the Year of 2020?
Yeah, so for me, it was a bit difficult because you look at Reddick and VeeKay, and obviously they don't have the gaudy numbers that somebody like Yuki Tsunoda does, but they're also in the top echelon of their series versus Tsunoda, who is still in a developmental series. So it's kind of looking at those and kind of weighing things equally for me. So looking at VeeKay, he showed some promise, but I think he was just not quite where Reddick or Tsunoda were in terms of season-long consistent performances. Obviously, the podium near the end of the season at Indianapolis, also had a 5th place early in the year at one of the many races at Indianapolis last year for IndyCar.
Yeah, man.
And so for me, it came down between Reddick and Tsunoda, and it was Tsunoda's rookie performance in a developmental series or Reddick's performance in the Cup series. And so for me, my rookie of the year is actually going to be Tyler Reddick. And that's because not only was he the best rookie, in my opinion, last year in the Cup series, it was also the progression for RCR. You look at what Daniel Hemrick did as a rookie in that car, and it was nothing compared to what Tyler Reddick did. 1 top 5, 2 top 10s for Daniel Hemrick, an average finish of 22.5. And then you look at what Tyler Reddick was able to do, 3 top 5s, 9 top 10s, and an average finish of 17.5. A huge jump up versus what Hemrick was able to do. I think Reddick showed a lot of people that he's here to play going into the future in NASCAR. He looked very, very strong for RCR going into the future. Tsunoda had a great season in F2, but it is the second series there in Formula 2. As a rookie, you're expected to have higher performance. For Reddick, he almost made the playoffs on points, and that's something that few rookies have been able to do in the recent past for NASCAR. So for me, Tyler Reddick is the rookie of the year.
Interesting. I would have not thought that you would have gone with Reddick.
I figured that one would be a curveball
for the wow factor.
Yeah,
that's a wow factor for me there, Kyle. You still manage to surprise me sometimes, even though I think we're very similar sometimes. You got me on this.
I figured that one would get you. Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely did. As the guy that you were also looking at there for the Rookie of the Year is my Rookie of the Year in Yuki Tsunoda. I was thoroughly impressed by this kid. The fact that he's making the jump up to Formula One next season just proves how good of a season he had. I mean, AlphaTauri clearly sees something in him, and I clearly do as well. I mean, a lot of people do. This kid is something very, very special. The second Japanese driver to move up to Formula One here, so a huge opportunity there for him. Very, very excited to see what Yuki Tsunoda can do with that entire organization over there at AlphaTauri, finishing only 15 points behind Mick Schumacher, who is, as voted by many of you, the top prospect of 2020. I mean, it's very difficult to say that Yuki Tsunoda is not the Rookie of the Year when he's going up against veterans there and Callum Ilott and Mick Schumacher, who had another year in F2, and Tsunoda just comes up there and takes third place in the standings. I think that's very, very impressive stuff from someone like him. So I have to give Yuki Tsunoda the nod for Rookie of the Year. While I am a little bit skeptical on the Tyler Reddick decision. I can understand where you're coming from. But, yeah, I think Yuki Tsunoda gets my Rookie of the Year award for 2020. But great nominees there. Hopefully next season we get to see even more rookies in contention here. Maybe even, a top 5 in a championship standings or something like that for a rookie. That would be pretty incredible. Most likely on the IndyCar side of things if it's going to happen. But you never know with the Cup Series or something like that. We could see something very, very special from somebody. But that'll do it for the Rookie of the Year award. But we stay on a similar path here, Kyle.
Yes.
With the Young Driver of the Year award. Very, very tough because Motorsports has got a bright future across the board. And I think the nominations here are clearly evident of that. As on Twitter, we asked you to vote based off of Colton Herta, Charles Leclerc, Mick Schumacher, and Max Verstappen. Colton Herta finishing third in the IndyCar standings. A very solid campaign from him. We saw him in his rookie season last year in IndyCar that he was going to be a force to be reckoned with. And in his sophomore season, he definitely went even to greater lengths this year. And he's going to be well within the championship fight next season. I can assure you of that. Charles Leclerc, Ferrari, a bit of a down season, but he was their only bright spot this season, getting major points, getting a couple of podiums along the way as well. Very impressive stuff from Charles Leclerc. You can see what Ferrari really saw in this kid when they first signed him back in their junior system, and now he's made it all the way up to the big team in Formula One. Mick Schumacher making the step up to Formula One next season after winning the F2 championship. We talked about him already. And then Max Verstappen makes his first appearance on the award show for today as he got nominated for the Young Driver of the Year for finishing third in the Drivers' Championship, ending the season strong with Abu Dhabi Grand Prix win and also the 70th anniversary Grand Prix win. Basically the third guy to do Mercedes 1-2 punch of Hamilton and Bottas the entire season. When he had reliability troubles, he was obviously out of contention, but when that car was at full force, he was basically on the podium every single week. So those are the 4 nominees for on Twitter. And overwhelmingly, very surprisingly, but this is understandable as Colton Herta actually did like our stuff as well. So a huge shout out to him. He actually wins overwhelmingly with 50% of the vote. And then we have a tie for second with Mick Schumacher and Max Verstappen with 18.8. Charles Leclerc there in last place with 12.5 out of 32 votes that were casted. So very impressive stuff there. Congratulations to Colton Herta. Thank you once again. Huge shout out to him for liking our post, and hopefully you can definitely see the resemblance or like the impact that his fans definitely had on the vote for this one. But he's definitely a deserving candidate and a deserving winner of the award this season. But who have you got for Young Driver of the Year, Kyle?
Yeah, Colton Herta was one of my nominees. A fantastic, fantastic year for him. 1 win, 2 podiums, but the consistency was key in finishing third in the championship. A very, very impressive season from Colton Herta. Technically making the move over to the full Andretti team next season, even though it's basically the same thing, just switching the number over and taking the full-time Gamebridge sponsorship there that Zach Veach was leaving behind. Very impressive season for him. And let's not forget, he's still only 20. So if we keep the U24 moniker there for eligibility, he can rack up some of these. And honestly, I think he might. The other two that I had both came from Formula One. First off, Charles Leclerc didn't have the season that Ferrari or anybody was hoping for. But relative to that car's performance, Leclerc was fantastic. The fact that he was able to pull 2 podiums out of that thing and probably should have had a third was remarkable. To finish 8th in the championship was remarkable. Nothing short of spectacular for him. And finally, Max Verstappen, of course, 1 non-podium finish when he did not retire from a race. So if he was finishing a race, it was probably on the podium. The only time he didn't was at Turkey. He was fantastic this year. Nearly snagged away second in the Drivers' Championship from Valtteri Bottas and Mercedes there. He was the only one this season that was even close to the Mercedes this season. So he is absolutely in there in my top 3 U24 or young drivers of the year.
Yeah, I have Max Verstappen as well for my nominees. But then 2 different ones here with Mick Schumacher for myself. Then Austin Cindric makes an appearance once again on today's show. Very impressive season from Austin Cindric. Like I said earlier, I was not as high on him as I am now. He definitely proved a lot of people wrong this season, including myself. Mick Schumacher, I've always been a big fan of this kid. And this season was just another great step forward to hopefully a future Formula One world champion in the shadow and the footsteps of his great father, Michael Schumacher. Max Verstappen, I mean, that's basically self-explanatory. The kid was just on fire this season for Red Bull. The only guy that could contend with Mercedes on outright pace the entire season when they didn't have issues, and that's really saying something to the driver's skill that he has when Alexander Albon's back in the mid-pack, in the mid to late single digits there in the top 10 to Max Verstappen consistently being on a podium week in and week out. So great nominees there for the Young Driver of the Year award, but who takes the award for yourself, Kyle?
Yeah, Herta and Leclerc are fantastic challengers, but for me, it's an easy pick. It's got to be Max Verstappen. He did it at the top level of motorsports in the world, and he did it in a car that was obviously, from Alex Albon, pretty difficult to contain. He was fantastic this year. Didn't quite get that second place in the championship. A couple things bounced his way, and he snags that away from Bottas, but a fantastic year from almost certainly a future world champion.
Yeah, I am in complete agreement with there. I gave Max Verstappen an A+ on our most previous episode where we graded the drivers' seasons, and I think he was just phenomenal this season. The most mature Max Verstappen we've seen in his entire young F1 career thus far, and it's only going to get better from here. I think the sky is the limit for Max Verstappen. Once they give him a championship-winning caliber car, this kid's going to be almost unstoppable. I think he could be the next Lewis Hamilton, and that's a lot of pressure going on to him, a lot of expectations. But in his young F1 career thus far, having 10 wins already, I think that he's going to be something very, very special for a long, long time in this sport. And Max Verstappen winning on outright pace, the 70th anniversary Grand Prix was probably one of the greatest drives I've ever seen from him so far, and very, very impressive stuff for Max Verstappen this season. I mean, we don't want to dismiss the other candidates, but I think Max Verstappen was overwhelmingly the favorite.
Yeah, they had great seasons in their own right, but for me, Verstappen was just on another level.
Yeah, couldn't agree with you more there. So congratulations to Max Verstappen on winning our nominations, but congratulations to Colton Herta on winning the Twitter portion of the award show. We move on to our final couple here, Kyle. We're getting down to it.
Some of the big ones here.
Yeah, we're getting down to it. We're leaving the best for last. And we go out to the Breakout Driver of the Year award. Some great nominations for this one. And at the moment, we have a tie for the result on Twitter. We'll list off the nominations first off here. Chase Elliott, the Cup Series champion. Can't believe I'm saying that. But at his young age of now 25, but then 24 when he won the championship, he had an incredible season, a breakout season for Chase Elliott. After multiple round of 8 eliminations, he makes it to the championship 4, and in his first appearance, he wins the championship against former champions in Joey Logano and Brad Keselowski, and a guy that was maybe one of the favorites coming into it in Denny Hamlin. He takes them all in the season finale 500 at Phoenix Raceway. Lando Norris, very impressive season from him, partnering Carlos Sainz, McLaren finishing 3rd in the Constructors' Championship. Lando Norris was a very impressive driver this season, and I was very impressed with him in his rookie season last season. I wish we kind of did this last season because there would have been a lot more Rookie of the Year nominations. But Lando Norris this season in his sophomore year in Formula One was very, very impressive. Week in and week out, super consistent. Brought the car home when it was reliable in the points on many occasions. So very deserving that Lando Norris is in a nomination for this one. Patricio Award finishing 4th in the IndyCar Championship. Very impressive. Was very close to winning at Gateway in both races until some late the final stint there where his car fell off. But multiple occasions, Patricio Award should have been on the top step of the podium this season. Didn't end up getting that first win, but he got that pole position earlier this year. Sergio Perez is also the 4th and final nominee on Twitter for the Breakout Driver of the Year. Understandably so, making the big jump up to Red Bull next season and winning a race, as we've talked about very much throughout this award show thus far. And it is a tie with 33.3% of the vote with Chase Elliott and Pato O'Ward. Very impressive, very well-deserving for both of those guys. Lando Norris with 19% of the vote there in 3rd, and Sergio Perez with 14.3% there in 4th place. But let's see if we can maybe dictate the end result here with our nominees here, Kyle, because we do have similarities here for this one. The Breakout Driver of the Year award, who are your nominees for the 2020 season?
Yeah, we'll start out with probably the most obvious one, and that's Chase Elliott. 5 wins on the year, 22 top 10s, but the big thing, 15.1 average finish to 11.7 and winning the Cup Series championship. 3rd youngest to ever do it. Remarkable season from Chase Elliott, really coming into his own as the season went along and is shaping up to, once again, dominate the season when you look at how the schedule breaks down going into the future. Chase Elliott is the guy now in NASCAR in terms of stardom, and he had a big, big breakout this season. The other two for me, maybe a little bit less so. You look at Sergio Perez. He's been around for a while, but I feel like this year he really broke out into his own. 10th to 4th in the championship, got his first win, of course, and gets the big move to Red Bull as well. When you look at his career, maybe you can say that he's already broke out, or maybe you can just say that he's an underrated driver or whatever. But when I look at the teams that he's raced for and when he's raced for them, because I think that's the key with when he went to McLaren, for me, I think that this was really, truly the big breakout season for Sergio Perez, where he got everybody's respect, and I'm excited to see what he can do at Red Bull going into next year. And finally, going back to V8 Supercars for this last one, Cam Waters going from 7th to 2nd in the championship, won his first non-endurance race as well this season, and is shaping up very, very well to kind of be that successor potentially to Scott McLaughlin in the V8 Supercars series. Very, very impressive season from him this year. Almost went out and won Bathurst as well, finishing 2nd there to Shane Van Gisbergen, but final nominee there for me in Waters.
Yeah, very good list of candidates there for yourself, Kyle. I follow similarly there with Chase Elliott as one of my nominees. I mean, I think you're playing out stupid if you don't have him on your 3 nominees, to be honest. Chase Elliott, what an incredible season for him. Proved I was skeptical of Chase Elliott. I thought he was a little bit overhyped. I didn't know if he had that clutch factor yet. And this season, at the prime young age of 24, he found that clutch factor. And it's a very scary thought that Chase Elliott going into this next season, 7 road courses on the calendar when he's basically unstoppable on those kinds of tracks, not to mention that he's very good on mile and a halves, super speedways and short tracks. Chase Elliott is almost the complete package here now as the schedule moves more into his driving style next season. Be on the lookout for that number 9 Napa Auto Parts Chevrolet for Hendrick Motorsports, because he'll be at the front quite a bit. He'll be going into the playoffs most likely with a lot of playoff points. But on this past season, Chase Elliott, a Cup Series champion, I mean, he blew me away, to be honest. I was very, very surprised, and deservingly so, should be nominated for this one. Well, another power outage, story of my life here in virtual world. Man, it's been a rough 24 hours, so we had to delay it as my power was out for over 15 hours overnight. Ooh. And obviously it's been a tough road to get back here, but we will not stop until this award show is finished. Hopefully the power stays on for the remainder of the show. We've got a couple more categories to go, but we'll get right back into where we left off with my nominees for the Breakout Driver of the Year, starting with Chase Elliott, like I said, and now we get into Lando Norris. This guy really, really impressed me this season. His consistency from last year to this year was incredible. I saw glimpses of it last year. Reliability issues probably hampered that more so, and the stats didn't really line up to what his actual running position was on most days in Formula One. But this season, out-qualifying Carlos Sainz 9-8 and out-finishing him 9-8 as well. Very impressive stuff from Lando Norris, to a guy that is going to the famed Ferrari program there next season in Carlos Sainz. So Lando Norris checked all the right boxes. While he may not have outscored Carlos Sainz in the actual points, was only 6 points off of him in the end of things. So very, very close between the two. Gets his first career podium at Austria in the opening race in Formula One's return to racing. Just an incredible season. He was right there on the cusp of top 4. We saw it in the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, qualifying 4th as well and finishing in 5th position in the season finale. So I can't say as much good things as I can about Lando Norris. He just really blew me away. And then lastly, I've got Pato O'Ward as my last nominee. What an incredible season for him in IndyCar in his second season. Aaron McLaren taking that next step forward as well. He was at the head of that ship, and he was just really, really solid. Finishing 4th in the Drivers' Championship, was close at Gateway a couple of times in their doubleheader. Just couldn't quite follow through, but he did end up getting that pole position. So very impressive stuff from Pato O'Ward. So I've got Chase Elliott, Lando Norris, and Pato O'Ward as my nominees to try and encapsulate all the stuff that has happened over the last 24 hours into a little blurb there. But for yourself, Kyle, who is your Breakout Driver of the Year?
Yeah, well, for starters, your power was out so long, I went out and got a haircut. So it's been a little bit, to say the least. Possibly
wardrobe change and all. I mean,
yeah, I got the haircut. I decided not even to try and hide it, whatever. But when it comes to my nominees here, Sergio Perez had a really strong season, of course. Cam Waters did as well. But when you're talking about Breakout Driver of the Year, it's hard to top the 3rd youngest Cup Series champion in history, and that's Chase Elliott. I switched the wardrobe. At least it made sense. I got the championship shirt on. But Chase Elliott did everything that people were expecting of him to eventually do. And maybe the expectations were it would come a little bit sooner, but when you look at his age and the age of other past champions, this was right on the timeline if he's going to be one of the all-time greats. As I mentioned, 3rd youngest Cup Series champion of all time, and just the transformation from last season to this season in terms of all the stats, getting a couple more wins. But the big thing was that clutch factor. And people questioned whether you would have that clutch factor going into Martinsville to go out, win that race, and in a must-win situation to make it through the championship 4. He proved it there, and then he proved it again at Phoenix when he went out and won the damn thing. So for me, although Sergio Perez and Cam Waters had great seasons in their own rights, Breakout Driver of the Year has to be Chase Elliott.
Yeah, I'm in complete agreement there. As much as I love Lando Norris and Pato O'Ward's incredible 2020 seasons, they just weren't at the same level as Chase Elliott winning a Cup Series championship, the highest level of stock car racing in the world. And Chase Elliott went out there and beat the likes of Brad Keselowski and Joey Logano, 2 former champions, and Denny Hamlin, who was maybe one of the favorites throughout the entire season, kind of teetered off a little bit as the season went on in the playoffs, but was right there at the head of things with Kevin Harvick for the majority of the season. But Chase Elliott came on strong in the playoffs, winning 3 of the last 5 races. I mean, he just did everything right in the playoffs to put himself in a really good position there to go and win the season finale 500 at Phoenix Raceway. Really impressed me this season, as I said earlier, before the last 24 hours have happened. But Chase Elliott, I was a bit on the fence with him a little bit. I thought he was a little bit overhyped. Obviously had some big shoes to fill, filling in for Jeff Gordon when he retired, and then winning a Nationwide Series championship all the way back in 2014. Feels like that's forever ago, but that's 7 years ago already for Chase Elliott. But he was just really, really solid. The entire season was in contention. Doesn't maybe have the wins total as a result as well. And, I mean, how can you not pick him as your breakout driver of the year, winning a championship at then 24 years of age, now 25. He's got his sights set on going back-to-back next season. With the amount of road courses that we've got for 2021, he's probably the odds-on favorite to get a lot of playoff points with his strength and the strength of schedule for that 9 team. Going to be very, very tough to beat next season, and he's going to be very, very tough for the remainder of his career because this is just the beginning of great things for Chase Elliott. So congratulations to Chase Elliott as our winner of the Breakout Driver of the Year. We're going to break the tie between Pato O'Ward and Chase Elliott there on the Twitter poll. So then Chase Elliott is your Breakout Driver of the Year. Now, we move into the final 4 categories here, Kyle. Fingers crossed we actually get to this and we can get through these. We start off with the moment of the year, a big one. It's a singular moment that really inspired us and really spoke to us, or we are going to remember for a long, long time, just not in 2020 alone, but beyond this year as well. So let's take a look at the nominees for this award. On Twitter, we asked you guys to vote for the between 4 candidates. Jimmy and Chase's exchange in the season finale 500 after Chase won his championship, and Jimmy Johnson in his final Cup Series race. The two exchange a nice handshake as they're driving by, a passing of the torch moment, if you will, as a lot of people are putting it. And you can see why, with Chase Elliott being so young and winning a first championship, and Jimmy Johnson on the way out looking to new things in 2021, going over to IndyCar. So a very memorable moment there, I'm sure, for Jimmy Johnson fans, for him to leave that way, and also for Chase Elliott fans, for him to kind of emerge as a current Cup star in that moment. We move on to the second one here. Bubba Wallace and the entire NASCAR garage area at Talladega, pushing the number 43 to the start of the grid before the race at the first Talladega race earlier this year. A very powerful moment. This was in light of the noose being found in Bubba Wallace's garage stall, and thankfully it was not a hate crime after further investigation. And but at that moment in time, we can't forget that that was what we thought it was. We thought it was something much more than it turned out to be. So thankful for that. But the garage area, NASCAR, his competitors, the entire garage area rallied around Bubba Wallace when he needed them most, in a very powerful moment, very emotional moment for many, many NASCAR fans at Talladega. Then probably the most recent one on our candidates list, as Romain Grosjean escapes disaster at the Bahrain Grand Prix. In a ball of fire, goes head on at many, many G-forces at the opening lap of the Bahrain Grand Prix. The car splits in half. A fireball erupts around the cockpit. He somehow has the mental capacity to get out of that car and has only slight burns. Had to have surgery the other day. He's doing well. And we're very, very thankful that Romain Grosjean is here today, in large part due to Formula One and Motorsports safety measures. And our final candidate on Twitter was Pierre Gasly's emotional win at the Italian Grand Prix at Monza earlier this year, winning his first Formula One race. And man, if you love Pierre Gasly, if you even love racing, that was a moment to behold, as we got to see him really settle on the podium and really take it all in, something that we don't usually see because, we're used to Lewis Hamilton dominating so much that we kind of forget that there is a possibility for a first-time winner, and Pierre Gasly was one of 2 that were able to accomplish that this season. So those are the 4 candidates on Twitter, and overwhelmingly, Romain Grosjean, maybe a little bit of recency bias, but all of these in their own right could have won this award. He wins on Twitter with 50% of the vote. Bubba Wallace in the NASCAR garage area at Talladega come home second with 25%. Pierre Gasly in third with 20%, and Chase Elliott and Jimmy Johnson's exchange with 5%. So those are the nominees, and Romain Grosjean is the winner on social media. But Kyle, what do you have as your nominees for the moment of the year?
Yeah, so when I was looking at this award, I wanted to get three kind of different moments. And so I looked for a moment for kind of like each major emotion that you kind of feel over a motorsport season. And so we'll begin with kind of that legendary moment, that kind of passing the torch moment. And for me, that was Jimmy Johnson and Chase Elliott following Jimmy Johnson's final full-time Cup Series race. And of course, Chase Elliott's championship, and seeing them just kind of have that moment on track, the fist bumper shaking of hands, whatever it was that they had there, was just such a perfect moment for Hendrick Motorsports fans, for Jimmy Johnson fans, for Chase Elliott fans, for NASCAR fans as a whole, really. It was such a perfect moment there on track for them to have that passing of the torch moment where Jimmy Johnson is leaving the sport as one of the greatest of all time, is leaving the reins behind for Chase Elliott to take that up behind, where obviously same team, and is now carrying on the torch forward for Hendrick Motorsports. Just one of those perfect moments that couldn't have played out any better, I don't think. Second for me is kind of that more than motorsports moment. And that for me this season was the NASCAR garage rallying around Bubba Wallace at the first Talladega race. And as you mentioned, it's important to remember the context of that event. And obviously we know afterwards, and thankfully, that it wasn't a noose, it wasn't a hate crime, it was a misunderstanding. But at the time, we didn't know that. And at the time, it was in a situation where we believed it to be a hate crime directly targeted at Bubba Wallace. And I think it needs to be remembered in that context, because even regardless as to what happened afterwards, that display, I think, was a big, big moment for NASCAR as a whole, because it's a sport that has struggled with diversity and racism in the past and in recently as well. So that was such an important moment with everything going on in the world at the time, and still currently, for an entire sport to rally around a driver like Bubba Wallace there and put on that kind of display was remarkable. And still seeing those highlights and everything like that still makes me pretty emotional seeing that. And then finally, you have those moments there. So I wanted to get a happy one as well, and one that really made you excited when it happened. For me that season, it was Pierre Gasly's win at Monza. When you take into account everything that Gasly had gone through in the past year leading up to that race, the fact that it was AlphaTauri's second ever win, and it was also at Monza for an Italian team, all of that put into one, and seeing his emotion, raw emotion on the podium as well, all of that combined for one of the moments of the year, in my opinion. So those are the three that I went with. Three kind of different ones in kind of different areas that you can look for in terms of a moment of the year, but those are the three that I settled on.
Yeah, those are all great. You can't go wrong with any one of those. For myself, I went with Romain Grosjean's emergence from that insane wreck. Very, very much in our minds currently, and will be in the future. We're wishing Romain Grosjean well on his return to motorsports eventually here. No longer in Formula One after this season, but I'm sure he'll return to racing in some capacity. Not the way that he would have liked to have gone out to end his Formula One career, but yeah, just such a relief was felt by the entire F1 community, fans across the world that were able to see the video. I mean, it's spectacular images. It just caught the world by storm, and how could it not? When something like this happens in motorsports, it gains mainstream attention. Not to say that it's deserving of it, but it's definitely not the circumstances we would have liked to see motorsports in the mainstream media. But we're very thankful that Romain Grosjean is still with us. And I think why I have that as a nominee for myself, the safety. I think it was just a perfect example of that. I have another mention that is kind of close to that as well with the safety in motorsports, but Romain Grosjean in that wreck at the Bahrain Grand Prix is one of mine. Second, I've got Bubba Wallace as well for my nomination for moment of the year. I mean, how can it not be? It was very, very powerful. Brought tears to my eyes when it happened live. And, even watching it back, that's going to stand out to a lot of people's minds, stand out in a lot of people's minds for many, many years to come. It's a great rallying point for the sport, a really true line in the sand moment where they are standing behind one of their fellow drivers. And Bubba Wallace is definitely deserving of that recognition. And then finally, I've got Ryan Newman walking out of the hospital 2 days after his Daytona 500 wreck. I mean, Romain Grosjean and Ryan Newman's wrecks, I hate to compare the two, but they are probably one of each of them are probably the scariest wrecks I've ever seen watching motorsports, and I've been watching it for about 13, 14 years. I know that's probably a little less than a lot of people that are motorsports fans in their 30s, but being a 20-year-old and being able to watch that for so long, I've seen a lot of wrecks, and that one truly took my breath away. And the fact that he was able to come out of the hospital in Florida at the Halifax Medical Center and have his two daughters hand in hand, I mean, that's just everything you wanted to see. You think the worst when you see something like that, and that he was able to, and the fact that he was able to walk out of there in high spirits, doing fairly well, had 4 races off. Then the pandemic break took a bit of a break as well, but he was able to return in NASCAR's return. An incredible story for Ryan Newman this season. So I had a tough time trimming it down to those 3, so I've got a couple of honorable mentions. Jimmy Johnson for myself was definitely one, with his passing of the torch moment to Chase Elliott there. You know, I used to be a Jimmy Johnson fan when I first got into the sport. You know, I did like Hendrick Motorsports a lot more. Then I realized that I was on the wrong side of things. Then I came to my senses and like Kyle Busch.
Okay.
But Jimmy Johnson is well deserving of being in a moment of the year nomination for sure. I can totally see where Kyle's coming. It just missed the mark there. I thought Newman's story was just a little bit too powerful to put Jimmy Johnson in there. My second honorable mention: Lewis Hamilton winning his 7th World Championship. Yep. I mean, that's just incredible. The emotion we never really get to see from Lewis Hamilton. We see the fiery side of him when something doesn't quite go his way, and that's understandable from a racing driver. They're very competitive, but this time we got to see a different side of Lewis Hamilton, and that's what I really appreciated about that moment, seeing history in the making and him continuing to make history from the rest of his career onwards. To tie 7 world championships in Formula One is something I'm going to remember forever. We've seen Jimmy Johnson tie 7 all-time in NASCAR. Now I got to see a tie with Lewis Hamilton to the great Michael Schumacher. So very special there. And then this one's just sentimental to myself. Kyle Busch winning at Texas. It's not going to win, obviously. I could never put that in above the 3 that I had. But for myself, moment of the year, just because if you saw me in that moment when he crossed the finish line, you would have thought I was a crazy person, but I was definitely...
No, they would have known you were a crazy person.
All right, Kyle, with a little hostility here with this nomination. But, yeah, Kyle Busch, I had to throw that in there because continuing that consecutive win streak to 16 seasons, very special to him, very special to myself as a fan of him for a very, very long time, and definitely worthy of being a mention to the moment of the year. But it will not win. I'm not that biased. I can't do that to this very professional award show that we've got going on here. But Kyle, what is your moment of the year?
Yeah, I know how much you do want to put that as your moment of the year, but I appreciate you trying to take the professional route, though. But for me, this was a pretty easy one as well. The Johnson-Elliott passing of the torch was great in its own right. Gasly's win was great in its own right. But there was one real moment this season that transcended sport, and that was the NASCAR garage area rallying around Bubba Wallace at Talladega. And yeah, you can talk about the 2 major crashes this season, and those definitely went greater into the mainstream area. But in terms of real-world importance, I think that display was something that really was kind of a turning of the page moment for NASCAR as a whole. We've seen this season them kind of stray away from some stances that they've had in the past. Of course, banning the use of the Confederate flag being the big one going into the future here when we have more fans at the track. So just the support around Bubba Wallace and just that display on such a grand scale was something remarkable to me. And I can't remember the last time I saw something like that in motorsports or in sports in general. It was truly a great display from everybody there. It had the attention of a lot of people outside of motorsports as well. So even though there were some great moments on track this season, there were some great moments in terms of history and records. For me, moment of the year has to be the NASCAR garage area rallying around Bubba Wallace at Talladega.
Yeah, I'm going with the exact same. When I first watched that moment, the wrecks in themselves are spectacular. Safety should definitely get its own award just for being as crazy, as safe as it is. It's just Truly one of the greatest inventions I've ever seen, really, that we are able to say that both of those drivers are okay and they walked away from the incident is just truly incredible. But Bubba Wallace at Talladega and the entire NASCAR garage area takes the cake for me. When I first watched it, I thought there was going to be nothing that came close to the moment of the year for me, and it still stands that way as we speak. You never see something like that in motorsports where it came together on a whim. The morning of, the drivers rallied around it. Kevin Harvick leading the charge, a lot of the veterans saying, we have to do something to show our support for Bubba Wallace. And they did it in the most powerful way that I've ever seen. And they did everything right. Talladega putting hashtag I stand with Bubba on the infield grass, a truly nice sentiment there from the track itself, and then NASCAR so showing their support on their social media channels and in the mainstream media that they are fully behind Bubba Wallace, as he was very much a catalyst for a lot of change in the sport this season. And the Confederate flag, like you said, being banned at all facilities for the future and beyond that. It's truly powerful what Bubba Wallace was able to do as a sole entity this season. And perfectly how you said it, he transcended sports this season, and that moment transcended sports this year. Just truly powerful stuff. Everybody that we nominated, though, could definitely have won this award. Whether you view it the same or not, there's definitely a lot of rallying around Bubba Wallace, and we're very, very excited to see what he's got in store for us in 2021 with his new team in 2311 Racing. So very special moment there for Bubba Wallace. I'm sure he'll remember it for the rest of his life. I'm sure a lot of NASCAR fans will remember it for the rest of their lives as well. So congratulations to Bubba Wallace on winning the Moment of the Year award for myself and Kyle. And congratulations to Romain Grosjean on winning the Twitter award. But we move into the final three categories here, Kyle.
The three big ones, I think.
The team of the year. A very cool one here. A little bit of a tough one, I'd say, for myself to try and narrow it down or try and even find some options as well. There's a lot of dominance in motorsports this season, but let's take a look at what we've got on Twitter first before we get into our nominations. Acura Team Penske on the IMSA side of things, the endurance world of motorsports. Obviously, the Rolex 24 in the new year, right around the turn for us, but the entire season, they win the championship there, the number 7 team. A truly incredible feat for that organization in IMSA. GMS Racing with their Truck Series program, a dominant season, having 3 of the 4 championship 4 spots at Phoenix Raceway, with ultimately Sheldon Creed taking home the championship in a 1-2 finish there for GMS Racing in the season finale. Mercedes in Formula One, probably the most dominant car we've ever seen in Formula One, the fastest car we've ever seen in Formula One, broke records left, right, and center. Lewis Hamilton was heading that ship with winning his 7th world championship and breaking records plenty alongside that. And then Chiquita, Formula E team, is the final nominee, obviously winning the championship there with Antonio Felix da Costa this past year as well. So who wins the team of the year? It's an overwhelmingly vote here for Mercedes F1 team. 66.7% of the vote. GMS Racing comes home in second with 19%. Acura Team Penske comes home in third. And then Chiquita comes home in fourth there with 4.8%. So congratulations to Mercedes Formula One team on their incredible season, winning the Constructors' Championship for a record 7th consecutive season in a row. No team has ever done that in Formula One's history, showing how dominant they have been in this turbo hybrid era. But who have you got for your nominees for the team of the year, Kyle?
Yeah, I'll start out with the fan vote winner in Mercedes Formula One, and I think that's the obvious nominee, at least for Team of the Year. Just another dominant season in the motorsport series in the world that has the highest spotlight in Formula One. Just another excellent season from Lewis Hamilton. Valtteri Bottas was disappointing in terms of his on-track performance, but he still racked up a ton of points and finished second in the championship. And that's just how dominant this car and how dominant this team was. Arguably made the best Formula One car ever this past season in terms of raw pace. They were knocking down race records. They were knocking down fastest lap records with basically ease this season. It was remarkable how fast those Mercedes were this season. So an easy nominee for me in terms of team of the year. Second one, GMS Racing. I went down to the truck series for this one just because in the way that NASCAR works, especially in the truck series, it's so tight and it's so competitive. So for a team to have 3 of their 4 full-time drivers make the championship finale and make those final 4 is nothing short of remarkable. And no matter what happened at the end of the race, whether it went green or if the caution still happens and everything plays out from there, they had the dominant car in terms of truck in terms of the full race in Brett Moffitt, and then they had the truck at the end of the race as well in Sheldon Creed. So just a fantastic season from them. They're going to be dominant once again going into next season. Even though they don't have Brett Moffitt, they've got a young lineup next season, but they've got a very skilled one nonetheless. So I thought that they deserved a shout out for how good they were this year. And my final nominee, I went with DS Chichita out of Formula E. I was very, very impressed with them this season. The first ever back-to-back champions there in Formula E. In their history, we've seen a lot of mixing up of the grid in terms of Formula E. There's been a lot of comers and goers as the seasons have gone along. But this season, DS Chichita really took that next step with Antonio Felix da Costa coming into that team. And they were very, very strong. Obviously, da Costa winning the championship by basically double, if we're being honest. He had 158 points. Stoffel Van Dorn finished second with 87. So not quite double, but just an absolutely dominating performance, winning 3 straight races in the middle of the season to really take a stranglehold of the championship there. And then Jean-Eric Vergne finished 1 point away from second place there, so just barely behind. But if you look at the team's championship, it wasn't even close. 244 points for Techeetah there. In second was Nissan E-Dams with 167. And that's really not been the story of Formula E in its history. It's been very, very close battles throughout its history. You just look back to 2019 when Jean-Eric Vergne won it with Techeetah. He won the championship with 136 points. Second was Sebastian Buemi with 119. So a very, very close championship battle there. And then in terms of the team's championship as well, Techeetah won that with 222 points. Second was Audi with 203. So one of the most dominating seasons we've seen in Formula E to this point from Techeetah. So I thought they deserved the shout out there. And I haven't had any real honorable mentions, but I thought I'd toss in one here. And that goes to Toyota Gazoo out in the World Endurance Championship. Another dominant season in LMP1, winning another Le Mans there. So I thought that I'd give them a shout out as we transition into kind of the future of WEC going into the future here in 2021 as they transition that LMP1 class over to hypercars and we start to see the changes there going into the future. I thought I'd give Toyota a shout out as well.
All right, nice job there, Kyle, getting your first honorable mention in late in the going. But I got a little bit of a similar lineup here as well for my nominations. Kyle outlined it very perfectly here. Mercedes Formula One team, pretty self-explanatory why they're a nomination this season. And then GMS Racing Trucks, very similar to what Kyle said. I was very, very impressed with what they were able to do this season. I didn't see them, kind of came out of left field for me this season. I wasn't 100% sure if that lineup, that young lineup, obviously Brett Moffitt with was the veteran over there at that group, but Sheldon Creed very much impressed me. Zane Smith shocked me how well he was able to adjust to the truck series and obviously was a Rookie of the Year nomination for myself earlier in this episode. So I think winning the championship in the truck series and having 3 of the 4 in the finale is very, very impressive. And then Team Penske, I think Team Penske was so solid on every form of motorsports this season, but I'm going to give the nod to Acura Team Penske in the IMSA side of things, winning the championship over there, that number 7 team. Very impressive stuff. Going to definitely start watching IMSA a little bit more next season. Got some interesting storylines to watch. Chip Ganassi Racing entering back into the fold with Kevin Magnussen jumping ship from Formula One to the endurance side of things. Very fun to watch, but Acura Team Penske gets my 3rd and final nomination for Team of the Year. But Kyle, who have you got winning a very illustrious award here in Team of the Year?
Yes, motorsports isn't necessarily known on the greater scale of things as a team sport, but everybody that is a motorsports fan absolutely knows that it is very much a team sport. Even though it's usually just the one driver in there, it doesn't happen without a ton of people's involvement. So Team of the Year, absolutely one of the awards of one of the most illustrious awards that you can hand out. And for me, it's an easy pick. It's got to be Mercedes this year. Just an absolutely dominant season once again. It's remarkable how far ahead of everybody else they are year in, year out. Even when it looks like people are starting to kind of get close, all of a sudden Mercedes takes that another jump ahead and kind of makes them look silly, if we're being honest, as the seasons go along. They, as I mentioned earlier, they made one of the best Formula One cars ever this season. And just to see what they've done year in, year out, but especially this season, nothing short of remarkable. So for me, it's got to be Mercedes as Team of the Year.
Yeah, they killed it this season. I can't go against that. Mercedes wins Team of the Year for me as well. They were just a force to be reckoned with, and they have been for many, many years now. I mean, they're just unstoppable. As soon as you think the pack is slowly catching up to them, they strike when it matters most, and they are just so consistent. Consistency kills in motorsports, and they are very lethal, to say the least. That's putting it nicely to the competition. They just there's nobody even close to them, really, in terms of how consistent they are with both of their drivers. Valtteri Bottas may be a bit of an exception this season with how lackluster, I guess, he was compared to Lewis Hamilton. But in all of my years of watching racing, this has been truly one of the most dominant seasons, where Red Bull was nowhere really close. Alexander Albon was a little bit behind his teammate Max Verstappen, so they never really had a challenging fight. So their constructors' title was basically wrapped up after the first round, to be honest. Mercedes is just so good. When they switch over to this next generation of car, it's going to be interesting to see if they're able to keep up this torrid pace that they've been on. But for 2020, how can you not give Mercedes Team of the Year, building arguably the fastest car, setting records, the best car in Formula One's history? That's saying something, because there's been a lot of dominant cars in Formula One, but this one probably is top of the pile, to say the least. So congratulations to Mercedes getting the full sweep, social media and our picks here for Team of the Year. Final two categories, Kyle, getting down to it here, and a very important one here. The race of the year. It's probably the second
damn
most
thing we
important
watch,
award,
of course, yeah.
Yeah, the entire race itself, while there may be some best finishes that maybe eclipse the finishes of some of these nominees, this overall racing product in the event in itself is just unmatched. And we've got some incredible nominees. There's so many to choose from this season, some great racing throughout all of motorsports. But here are your nominees from our social media page. So first off, we start off with the first Bristol race for the NASCAR Cup Series. Very memorable race at Bristol, having the bottom line, the majority of the race, no practice or qualifying. So the bottom line was the main line for a lot of the competition. But as the race wore on, the top line came in, and it provided some truly exciting racing. Denny Hamlin in the lead late, gets loose off of turn 2, slams the wall, spins out in turn 4, chaos ensuing. Then we go to a final restart. Chase Elliott taking the lead there from Joey Logano, it seemed, but he gets loose underneath Joey Logano going into turn 3 and 4, wiping them both clean out. Brad Keselowski is the very lucky guy on the inside lane, powers past them, no caution with 2 to go, and Brad Keselowski holds off Clint Bowyer to win the first Bristol race of the season. Why NASCAR is getting to a Bristol dirt race, that is a different argument and discussion that we've already discussed when you look at how well the first Bristol race did this season, but definitely worthy of being a nominee for this one. Our second nomination, the Monza, the Italian Grand Prix, Monza, obviously. Pierre Gasly winning that race with an incredible podium of Carlos Sainz in second and Lance Stroll in third. Hamilton having his issues, the weirdest issue you ever see, crossing the pit lane when the pit lane was closed due to Kevin Magnussen's stray car at the pit entry, forcing Hamilton to the back of the pack, allowing some of these guys that are usually in the mid-pack of the field in Formula One to pounce and take advantage. As Bottas was back in the field, Verstappen had retired, Albon was having a poor day. So it really allowed these mid-pack teams to shine, and the podium was the best case of showing that. Very impressive stuff. Pierre Gasly getting his first career win in Formula One. We've talked about him quite a bit throughout this episode, but the Monza GP was something very, very impressive and fun to watch. We go over to the Xfinity side of things with our next nomination, the truly chaotic race that was in the wet at the Charlotte Roval. I don't know if I can really describe this all in a couple of words, but I mean, just to say there's a lot of spins, a lot of chaos, and a truly exciting finish. Chase Briscoe gets loose and gets a really big puddle out of turn one there on the last restart of the race. AJ Allmendinger, the wet force, the road course king that he has been known to be, prevails and wins on the Roval. What a crazy race. Lots of tension. Red flag at one point. The amount of rain that we saw at that race is something that we will never see probably again. It was just truly torrential conditions there for the Xfinity Series guys. We were hoping for the Cup Series race to be similar. Didn't end up quite being that way. So the Xfinity Series definitely deserving of a nomination. We don't usually see NASCAR in the wet. So I think that was truly something very special to watch. And our final nomination on Twitter was the Sakir Grand Prix, a very recent Grand Prix for Formula One. Sergio Perez getting his first career victory in Formula One. George Russell replacing Lewis Hamilton. Jack Aitken replacing George Russell at Williams, and then Pietro Fittipaldi replacing the injured Romain Grosjean for this one. A new layout at the Bahrain International Circuit where they try the outer one. A less than a minute lap time. Incredible stuff. George Russell qualifies P2 to Bottas's P1, setting up for an exciting race. George Russell takes the lead on the opening lap. Seems like he's in very much contention to win the race. It seemed like a clean victory for him and Mercedes to get his first career points, podium, and win in Formula One all in one go, all to be destroyed with a one spin of Jack Aitken off the final corner, causing chaos, a virtual safety car. The Mercedes double stack. They have the worst pit stop I've probably ever seen that they've ever had in their ever existence, and what a time to do it. George Russell then has a puncture late in the going after passing Bottas. There's so many things that you could describe about that race, but Sergio Perez ends up the victor, going from last to first, a spin and win from a first lap collision with Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen. He wins in Bahrain, with Esteban Ocon getting his first career F1 podium in second, and Lance Stroll being third once again in this one for the Formula One. So for the Formula One nominees for this category. I mean, you could give them all the award.
They're
I mean,
all
they were
great
so
in their own
incredible.
right, yeah.
And then the winner on social media was the Sakir Grand Prix. Could be a little bit of recency bias, but it's definitely worthy of winning this one, as they get 42.9% of the vote. The Monza race in Italy gets second with 28.6% of the vote. The Roval race in the wet for the Xfinity Series gets 21.4%, and then the Bristol Cup Series race gets 7.1% of the vote. So congratulations to everybody that participated in the Sakir Grand Prix, because it wasn't your usual cast of characters on the grid as well. Very impressive stuff there in Formula One. They got 2 nominees. NASCAR gets 2 nominees. Unfortunately, IndyCar is a 0 on all of our nominees this season. That just shows you how competitive it really is in motorsports to get a nominee for this category. But Kyle, we've got your nominees to get to, so take it away.
Yes, I'll start with the first Bristol race, I guess. The Cup Series had quite a few strong races this season. It was a toss-up between my nominee for the Cup Series and your nominee, which we'll get to in a minute. But for me, looking at this one, Bristol 1 had to be my race of the year, just because consistently throughout that race, there was excitement the entire way. Even if you take away the craziness that was kind of the end kind of sequence there of that race, Ryan Blaney looked like he was going to be a strong guy in that race, and then he went and wrecked in the early part of the race. So there was constant action throughout this entire thing. But yeah, when you take into account Denny Hamlin getting loose and getting up into the wall, and then obviously after that final restart, the insanity that was Chase Elliott diving it down on Logano and sending them both into the wall, and through comes Brad Keselowski, and just everything with that. It was a quintessential Bristol race, and was just a fantastic one. I'm just as heartbroken as you are that they're going to toss dirt on it and take away one of our fantastic short track races, but you know what? It's NASCAR doing their thing. At least we still got one in the playoffs. But spectacular race, and I think it's the Cup Series race of the year, but that's not the award. It's race of the year, so I got 2 other ones to look at. I nominated the Italian Grand Prix for this one. I've mentioned it a few times throughout the show already, but this race had everything that you could want from a Formula One perspective. You had the first half of the race being kind of status quo, but then just chaos ensues. You have Hamilton getting the pit penalty, and then you have Leclerc's accident and a huge off there, the red flag coming back, another standing start, a 3 wide going into the first few corners, Lance Stroll going wide, and then all of a sudden it's Pierre Gasly of all people to come out through it all, and then he holds off the charging Carlos Sainz and the McLaren there in one of the closer finishes that we've seen in a while in Formula One as well. Just a fantastic race throughout. And then when you factor in, of course, Pierre Gasly's story, as I've mentioned time and time again, and everything involving that emotional victory, that one's got to be up there for me. And finally, last nominee, going back to North America for this one, the Charlotte Roval in the Xfinity Series, the chaos that was that race. I was on the edge of my seat for the entire thing because at any moment they could cut to something else and show like a battle in the middle of the pack, and then 2 seconds later cut back to the leader and he's doing a 360 out of a turn. Like, it's every single moment of that race was edge of your seat entertainment. It was fantastic. With so many road courses on the schedule, I hope we get a couple more wet races next year, because that would be fantastic. I hope we get a legitimate wet race in the Cup Series and don't get like the first few laps like it was this year. The Xfinity Series has been spoiled with the wet races over their history. It's been a while since we got one truly like that, and that was just spectacular. And yeah, as you mentioned there, even right up until the end when Chase Briscoe goes spinning and AJ Allmendinger walks away with the victory, just all of it was spectacular. I loved every second of it. I hope we get it again. And I'll toss in another honorable mention just because I want to get one more in here. The Bathurst 1000 this year. It was the first time that I'd ever checked out that race during the race weekend. Qualifying was awesome to check out. The race, when I was able to catch it because I missed the first little bit of it, was spectacular as well. It was my first real live introduction into the V8 supercars. I loved every minute of it. It was a great battle between Cam Waters and Shane Van Gisbergen coming down to those final few laps. So I was a big fan of that, and I'll definitely be checking out more supercars next year. And so for that, I want to give that an honorable mention.
Fair enough. I am very, very curious to see what you pick for your race of the year, because you could make a case for all of them.
Honestly,
I'm very, very curious. They're all so good. They're all so good. I mean, we're spoiled.
Yeah.
I mean,
hell, I might pick one of your two nominees.
Many different
like,
series.
Oh,
right. Like there is so many good ones.
We had some bangers
speaking of my nominees, let's get into those. Yeah. We've got. For my Cup Series nomination, not to say that we had to pick a Cup Series one, but I felt a little bit obligated to, because that is my main.
There was a lot of good Cup Series races as well, though. So I feel like they're deserved.
Well, yeah, I think this one. I was close to picking the Bristol one. It was a toss-up between this one and that one. I wish it was the Texas Motor Speedway race, the Wednesday race, but I couldn't be that biased once again. I went with the Daytona regular season finale for the NASCAR Cup Series, where William Byron was triumphant. Didn't make it onto the Twitter poll because I was really struggling to make this decision.
Yeah, that was a late addition.
Put into the spreadsheet. It was a late addition because I had to go back, look through the results and everything, look through the highlights just to get my clear picture straight on this one. But Super Speedway Racing delivered this season. I didn't say restrictor plate. I got it right. Super Speedway Racing.
There you go.
Gets the nod this season. I'm such a big short track guy. I love them, as many NASCAR fans do. But I've always been a little bit, on the fence of Super Speedway Racing a little bit. It's been good, but this package this season delivered on so many different occasions. The Talladega and Daytona races, I was close to putting the Talladega fall race, but the chaotic finish and the mismanaging of NASCAR's rules at the end took that one away from me. I couldn't nominate that one. And this one didn't have any controversy in it, despite Tyler Reddick's reckless driving there late in the going. But I'll let that one go. I'll let that one slide, Tyler. But William Byron, in a crazy last regular season finale, NASCAR is switching this race for Daytona from the July 4th weekend to the regular season finale. And then Jimmy Johnson, Matt DiBenedetto, William Byron, all fighting for the cut line there going into the last race, point switching every second because they never went single file against the wall. It was always double wide, triple wide, 3 wide racing throughout the entire event. Truly edge of your seat action. And this race delivered on so many levels. Wrecks, not to say that we want to see wrecks, but they do add a little bit of intensity to it. Jimmy Johnson,
you're lying if they're not entertaining.
Right. And it was great to see that nobody was injured or anything spectacular happened in terms of that. They were usual super speedway wrecks. They happen. William Byron making a 4-wide pass for the lead, spinning, getting Joey Logano's cut tire, sending them all through the pack. Then William Byron emerges, holding off a late charge there from Martin Truex Jr. and a cast of characters to win his first career race. I'm a big William Byron fan. I've loved this kid since he was over at Kyle Busch Motorsports in the Truck Series, and this was a great moment to watch. Seeing the emotion from him, it's great to see these first-time winners at Daytona. It seems like a common theme. Eric Jones, a former KBM driver, gets his first career win there, and then now William Byron gets it here this season. Just a great race. I can't emphasize that enough. If you haven't watched it, NASCAR releases all their full races on YouTube. I would highly recommend watching this one because this one is a classic one at Daytona. Daytona always delivers, but this one was really, really special. I would usually give the nod to Bristol, but Daytona, that was how good this race was this season, that it overtook a Bristol race for me. My second nomination, one that was on the Twitter poll, the Sakir Grand Prix. I think it was just from start to finish. I wasn't just looking at the race itself. I looked at the entire weekend that led up to this race. Qualifying kept me interested. I knew that George Russell was going to be involved in this, so he had a shot to win. A great storyline there. Great to keep track of Jack Aitken, Pietro Fittipaldi, and their storylines as well. Could Max Verstappen get in the mix there? Then that first lap collision between himself, Charles Leclerc, and Perez. What a crazy start that was to the race. Then George Russell holding his own, I guess you could say, with about a 3-second lead there over Valtteri Bottas. Kept you on the edge of your seat a little bit. Bottas, if Russell ever made a mistake, he would be right there within DRS range, and he could pounce on his one-off teammate for this race. Then we get into the chaotic last 30 laps. I mean, what more can you want from a racing event than that? Just truly spectacular racing. Perez passing everybody throughout the entire bit where George Russell was leading, putting himself in the position to take the lead on the safety car with Jack Aitken's missing front wing laying there stranded on the front stretch. Mercedes double stacking because they think they have the race in the bag. George Russell maybe having a power issue throughout there as well. Albon kind of falling back, Verstappen out of the race. I mean, just pure chaos in this race. I mean, I could not ask for much more. And Perez coming out on top in a must-win race really for him to get this Red Bull seat, it seems. And now he's got it for 2021. The storyline's just not in this race for the 2020 season, but it carries on to the future where George Russell staking his claim for that second Mercedes seat here in the near future, most likely in 2022. And then Perez sealing the deal there with the 2021 Red Bull seat to partner Max Verstappen. Just a crazy race, truly deserving of a nominee, in my opinion. It takes the cake over Monza. Just the entire weekend in itself just really got got the juices flowing, got me amped up for race day, and it was just something really, really special to watch. And then, like Kyle, my third nomination, the Roval wet race. I mean, that was just chaos. There's no other word for it. Just truly spectacular stuff to see the second level of motorsports having that competitive of a race. So many comers and goers. Alex Labay up at the front at one point in time.
Yes.
Like, just incredible stuff. Our Canadian guy didn't get in the Canadian Driver of the Year, but he had a Canadian Drive of the Year moment there in that race, coming from the back to the front. I think he still finished top 5, top 6 there in that race.
Yeah, even after
really impressive stuff. Exactly. And very, very great race there. I had my grandparents over for that one, and they were like, "What's he getting so amped up about?" And I'm like, "Are you kidding me? The drivers are racing in the wet in NASCAR. You never see this." And it was really, really special to watch. So the race of the year is probably my favorite category of them all because it is the most upbeat one. It's the thing we get to recap week in and week out, and we were able to recap every single one of those races for you guys this season. So that was very, very cool to kind of take in. But who is your winner of Race of the Year? Very interested to see what you've got here, Kyle.
This is such a tough one. Like, I could easily take one of your nominees as my winner. Like, there were so many good ones, and I think we got a really, really good short list of the best this season. But for me, I think I gotta go with it. The Charlotte Roval from the Xfinity Series. It was just...
Oh, he does it.
I had to do it, man.
Oh, my
NASCAR stock cars in the wet. I haven't seen a race like that in so long. And honestly, I wasn't enough or a big enough NASCAR fan back when you had any like the classic wet races in the Xfinity series to be watching those races live. Like I've watched the Montreal wet race highlights countless times. But I was too young and wasn't enough of a motorsports fan to watch and seek out those second or third tier races back then to watch them live. It was the first time that I had really watched a NASCAR race in the wet. That was a wet race from basically start to finish, and to that extent, it was fantastic. I've been hoping to see a wet race like that in the Cup Series for a long time, but the Xfinity Series delivered on it, and it was constant action the entire time. The fact that you could have multiple people spin from the lead, come back, and spin out again, and all this kind of stuff, and the fact that we had some different names in the mix as well, like you mentioned Alex Labbe there, up in the top 5 for a lot of that race. It was just fantastic and everything that you could want from that situation. And so even though Bristol was
the
great,
camera shots were insane. When you see a guy, one goes after the other into that wall going up the hill. Oh my God. Just hilarious.
And even though Bristol was great in its own right and Monza was as unexpected as it was, it's got to be the Roval for me in the Xfinity Series.
Oh man, that's a great one. That's such a great race. Like, it's gonna go down in history as one of the great Xfinity Series.
That's gonna be a race that you can pop on those highlights and watch them like every single year or multiple times a year, and you'll be excited about it every single time.
So many range of emotions. And before I get into my race of the year, a nominee to the Turkish Grand Prix as well, the chaotic race that one definitely deserves an honorable mention for me. Oh man, this is a tough one to give out because the Roval, the wet race, truly incredible scenes. It's just something I'm never going to like. The torrential downpour, the water that was spewing into those gutters was just insane. The drains, I mean, you're never going to see a river of water going through, and they had to race in these conditions. So many range of emotions. I felt like too. You're like, oh my God, this guy's out, this guy's in, who's out, who's on the pit strategy, and then we have a red flag, Gregson and Herbst getting into it because of their contact. I mean, that was a great race. The Daytona one in its own right deserves a place as a nominee. Just tension throughout for the playoffs. If you were a Jimmy Johnson fan, William Byron fan, Matt DiBenedetto fan as you were, Kyle, I mean, it was just truly tense stuff. That Jimmy Johnson wreck at the end kind of took it away just for me a little bit at the end because you knew what the point situation was like. It was just who was going to win the race, and the William Byron took that win to get his first career victory. It was really, really nice. But my race of the year goes to the Secure Grand Prix in Formula One. I never thought I would give it to Formula One in terms of a race of the year. They left it late, but they just edged out the Roval for me. The Roval was a close second, but I have to give it the Secure Grand Prix because I don't know if I've ever been as heartbroken as I was for George Russell in that one. The amount of range of emotions that I had in that race. Oh my God, he took the lead on the first lap. That's incredible. I was staying calm as much as I could for the next like 30, 40 laps. And it was just like, oh, it's tense stuff. Oh, there's a spin by Aitken. Oh, that's his former car. They come down pit road. Okay, easy stop. George Russell kind of gets out clean. Bottas sitting there for 40 some seconds. I mean, just pure chaos. Russell has to come down pit road. He then gets fresh tires, restarts fifth, passes Bottas, passes Stroll, passes Ocon, sets his sight on Perez, all for it to fall short of getting that first career win of Perez in his sights. Less than 2.5 seconds to victory for George Russell. In all likelihood, would have got there without the puncture. But then, not to get away from Sergio Perez winning the Grand Prix, just incredible for him. Really, the images that came out of it, the fireworks in the background, the pink fireworks, Perez standing on his car, arms outwards like, I am here. This is my moment. And he definitely earned it after this season that he's gone through and his entire career up to that point in time. He had done everything right this season. And that was just the exclamation point on a near-perfect season for Sergio Perez. As you mentioned earlier in the show, his only non-points finishes were when he retired from mechanical issues there at the Bahrain Grand Prix and the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. I mean, the guy was just superb this season, and him driving from back from last to first after that first lap collision. I thought he was done. I thought he would have floor damage. You usually see that, but the suspension on that car withstood that incredible impact with Charles Leclerc, and Sergio Perez put on one of the drives of the season, and therefore culminating into the race of the season. George Russell will get his day, but Sergio Perez and that entire race, Esteban Ocon, a Canadian Lance Stroll getting on the podium as well, Racing Point with a 1-3 finish, just checked all the boxes for me. Heartbroken for George Russell, but also ecstatic for someone like Sergio Perez after getting that first win. That's a tough one. It was kind of eating at my heart a little bit to give that to not give it to the Roval, because I do love NASCAR. That's my first and foremost passion, but I cannot exclude the Sakir Grand Prix as my race of the year. Just truly magnificent stuff for me there. Interesting, you didn't have it nominated, but it's easily that I could have picked.
Very close number 2 for me in terms of the F1 race, because I didn't want to.
I'm surprised because you're such a big Sergio Perez guy. You know, I thought, oh yeah, Perez did it.
The reason why I didn't go with Sakir as kind of my F1 nominee was because it had the storyline all throughout. And if Russell had come back through and won the race, absolutely would have been my race of the year. But it was like a 10, 12-second victory for Perez by the end of it. So as soon as Russell had the puncture and went off, you basically knew how the end result would be. So that's why Monza just got the edge for me, because you were on the edge of the seat
for the finish
all the way to the end where Carlos Sainz was racing him down. And if there was one more lap there, Sainz probably gets Pierre Gasly at the end of that race. And so that's why I slightly went with Monza. But I honestly spent like 10, 15 minutes trying to decide what my nominees would be for here. The only one that I knew would be in the 3 was the Charlotte Roval in the Xfinity Series. So that's part of the reason why it ended up being my pick as well.
Yeah, I can't go against what you said there.
We had a lot of good ones. Yeah.
That Roval race was just insane. Like, man, that's so tough.
I love me some chaos, man.
I'm so happy that you gave it, so then I don't feel bad for not giving it to him. So that we spread it out a little bit. We give it to Formula One and NASCAR. Yeah. IndyCar, step up your game for next season. We're looking out for a race of the year candidate from yourself next year. Indianapolis 500 was good, but then it entered under caution. So that probably takes away from the excitement there to end that illustrious race. But
what race was it? The Rosenquist Award battle at the end of it. That was a pretty solid one, but I can't exactly remember where that was at. It might have been like Mid-Ohio or something like that. Road America, maybe.
I think it was Mid-Ohio. I think.
Yeah,
that's where you got
I can't exactly remember where it was, but that was probably my IndyCar race of the year. Looking back on things, but just missed out on the top 3 there. But hey, you've got a lot of road courses on the schedule next year. You've got a lot of marquee names for IndyCar next year, which will definitely play into things. And of course, anytime you got the Indy 500, that's always going to be a candidate for race of the year. If it ends under green, ending under yellow is always a disappointment. I'm glad that they do keep it strict to the 500 miles there. But who knows what we'll get next year for IndyCar, because there's a lot of notable names, to say the least, involved all throughout the year, and that's from full-time guys to part-time guys to Indy 500 only. Like, we got quite the year coming up.
Oh man! I mean, 2021 is going to be insane
for everything.
We thought this year was hard to pick nominees. Just wait till next year.
No, next year is going to be bonkers. Like, it's
yeah, we're going to have. What is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 more races for Formula One to choose from next season.
That's right.
Most likely 23.
Oh,
I mean, NASCAR got their full schedule in, but IndyCar, I think, bumping up the races slightly as well, just based off this last year. I could be wrong on that, but we've got big names in IndyCar, superstars in the making in NASCAR, and current ones at that. And then Formula One always provides a race or two that is just going to be a noteworthy and nominee for Race of the Year candidate. And for this one, Kyle gets the winner with the wet race at the Roval. I've got the Sakir Grand Prix, and the fans agreed with me on that one, the Sakir Grand Prix, so I'll take that. But the wet Roval race was definitely worthy of this award. The Daytona Cup Series race, the Bristol Cup Series race, the Monza race, the Italian Grand Prix. That's a mouthful, man. That's just a great way to segue into the final award for the 2020 Motorsports year. Wow,
what a year it's
been.
Yeah.
And we end it with the Driver of the Year award. Lots of great candidates for this one. And we'll take a look at what we had on Twitter before getting into our nominees. We've got Antonio Felix da Costa, the Formula E champion from this past season. Feels like a long time ago since he was crowned champion, but let's not forget that was this year that he was crowned champion and won it overwhelmingly by how much was it you said, Kyle? It was like
71 points.
70 points or something.
Yeah, 71 points. He won the championship by, and second place had 87.
Yeah, just dominance in 1 point total there over his competitors there for Antonio Felix da Costa. Scott Dixon, the IndyCar champion, gets his sixth championship in IndyCar.
Yes.
Yeah, sixth championship in IndyCar. Very impressive stuff from him. Started the season off strong with 4 out of the first 5 races of the season. I had him as a bounce back candidate of the year, but I didn't quite give him that award, but he is a nominee on Twitter for the Driver of the Year award. Lewis Hamilton, obviously winning his 7th, tying the all-time record held by Michael Schumacher with championships, eclipsing the all-time wins record, most podiums as well. Just what a season for Lewis Hamilton over in Formula One. And Kevin Harvick on the NASCAR side of things, not Chase Elliott, but Kevin Harvick gets the nominee over as a Driver of the Year award for his 9 victories. Didn't make it to the championship for in that dramatic fashion in the Martinsville race. That could have been a finish of the season if we did that category because of just how crazy of a finish that was with Kevin Harvick. But doesn't get the championship this season after being the most dominant season I've ever seen really in all of my years of watching NASCAR. Just fell 1 spot short of making it to the championship for fighting for a championship. But for 34 races of the season, I guess, without excluding the championship finale, Martinsville, and I guess Texas, 33 races then, Kevin Harvick was definitely the nominee for Driver of the Year for the NASCAR side of things. So who's the winner for Driver of the Year on social media? Scott Dixon takes it. I was a bit surprised by this one when the results came in, but Scott Dixon takes the Driver of the Year award on social media with 41.2% of the vote. We've got a tie for second between Lewis Hamilton and Kevin Harvick with 23.5% of the vote, and Antonio Felix da Costa finishes 4th with 11.8% of the vote. So congratulations to Scott Dixon for being nominated the Driver of the Year award on social media. Definitely deserving, wins the IndyCar championship, was just that little bit above Joseph Newgarden the entire season, with too much to catch up for the Team Penske driver there in Newgarden. And Dixon just prevailed there in the end of things. Did everything he needed to do there in St. Petersburg in the season finale to hold off the hard-charging Newgarden for the championship. So this is it, Kyle, the last award of the season. What have you got for your nominees for Driver of the Year?
Yes, we'll start with the easy one, and that's Lewis Hamilton. Anytime you win the F1 championship, it probably means that you're going to be nominated for Driver of the Year. And in the fashion that Lewis Hamilton did it, he was the easiest pick of the bunch. Just another stupendous season from Lewis Hamilton. Missing a race, it didn't matter for his season-long championship. It's the best average finish for a driver in Formula One since 2002 when Michael Schumacher finished on the podium in every single race. Just an absolutely ridiculous season from Lewis Hamilton. Mercedes was great. He was otherworldly, and it resulted in another dominant championship victory. And now he goes into next season looking to break the all-time record for most championships in a career with 8. And the way that Mercedes is going, it looks more like it's inevitable than it is a possibility. Lewis Hamilton, just that good. Mercedes is just that good. And he is absolutely deserving of a spot in the top 3 here. I went a little bit different with my other 2 on these ones. I actually nominated Antonio Felix da Costa for this one. I wanted to give the shout out to Formula E and Antonio Felix da Costa just because of how dominant, as I mentioned earlier when I was talking about Techeetah, he was this year. 3 victories on the season, won the championship by 71 points when second place had only 87. It was one of the most dominant victories in Formula E's history to this point for Antonio Felix da Costa. It was a shortened season. It was a weird season for Formula E. We don't really know how their season next year is going to work just because they go to street circuits, and street circuits are some of the most difficult to coordinate when it's COVID. So hopefully we'll get a somewhat normal Formula E season in. But for this year, under the circumstances, Antonio Felix da Costa showed up big time, won the championship by a wide margin. So I wanted to give him a shout out in this one. And my final nominee, not Scott Dixon. Nope, we're same country, same first name, but Scott McLaughlin. We're going back to V8 Supercars for this one. 13 wins in 31 races. Won the championship by 471 points. That's the same gap from first to second as the gap from second to eighth. He was extremely impressive in his final season in V8 Supercars with Team Penske there, making the move to IndyCar for this upcoming year with still, of course,
Crazy.
Team Penske. Can't wait to see how that goes. But Scott McLaughlin was once again the guy in supercars, and with him leaving, opens up the field to a bunch of different potential winners next season. But given how dominant he was, how many victories he was able to rack up this season, didn't quite break through to get that Bathurst victory this season, but just a spectacular season from Scott McLaughlin. So he is my third nominee for Driver of the Year.
Yeah, very great nominees there for yourself, Kyle. On my side of things, we got one similarity, and that is obviously the big one in Lewis Hamilton. How can he not? He just an incredible season, even late after having to battle COVID and having the tenacity and the drive to come back for the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix and still finish on the podium. Just shows you how strong of a guy this is. Truly the epitome of a champion, the definition of a champion this season, on and off the track. Lewis Hamilton definitely deserving
important point
of a nomination for Driver of the Year. Kevin Harvick got my nominee. I got a nomination for myself for Driver of the Year just based off of his dominance. I mean, like, the guy was seemingly unstoppable. Goes into the final round of 8 of the playoffs, most likely the championship favorite. Just has to trickle across the line, make it to Phoenix, but doesn't quite get it done. But the entire season up to that point, Kevin Harvick was just unstoppable. Rodney Childress and that entire Ford team over there for Stewart-Haas Racing was just incredible, winning almost, it seemed, week in and week out. When he wasn't winning, Denny Hamlin was winning, but Kevin Harvick was just that more consistent, that much more dominant than the 11 team to get my nomination for Driver of the Year. And then finally, I nominated the other Scott, and that is Scott Dixon for his IndyCar championship. Came out of the gates flying and was just super consistent from then on. The fact that he is tied or is he tied? I believe he's tied with the all-time record for IndyCar championships now. Yeah, and I mean, the guy is just on a winning record. He's a winning machine, and we're going into next season with the likelihood that Lewis Hamilton and even Scott Dixon can go out there and break the all-time records for their respective motorsport series. And crazy to think that that's even we're going to be able to even watch that take place. But we'll see if it happens or not in 2021. But those are my nominees for Driver of the Year. This is it, Kyle. The final award to give out. Who is your Driver of 2020?
Okay. Driver of 2020. Well, it was difficult to fill out my nominees and trying to bring that short list down to 3. But in terms of picking Driver of the Year, it was one of the easier ones to pick. It's Lewis Hamilton. Everything that he did this season, on the track, off the track, was spectacular. Antonio Felix da Costa had a great season in Formula E. Scott McLaughlin had a great season in V8 Supercars. But Lewis Hamilton was the most dominant driver this year in the biggest series in motorsports in Formula One. Just another ridiculously good season from him. Continues to make that claim for one of the greatest of all time. Don't know where he really ranks in my personal list, but he's definitely in that top 3 conversation at the very least. And after next season, when he probably goes out and wins a record 8th, he makes that conversation all the more difficult. He has been nothing short of remarkable and was that once again this season. So an easy pick of Driver of the Year for me.
Yeah, well said. Lewis Hamilton takes the Driver of the Year award for me in 2020. Kevin Harvick, Scott Dixon, great seasons. I can't give it to Harvick because he didn't win the championship, but those 9 wins alone earned a nomination from myself. Scott Dixon, a truly deserving champion on the IndyCar side of things, but wasn't as dominant as what Lewis Hamilton was. And his off-the-track stuff that he did this season, just, you have to be the full package as a driver, and to earn Driver of the Year, it takes that. And Lewis Hamilton was the complete package this season. Was unstoppable behind the wheel of his Mercedes, and he could have solely won the Constructors' Championship for Mercedes based off of his point total alone over Red Bull Racing. That just shows you how dominant he was and how poor Valtteri Bottas was, to be honest. But Lewis Hamilton was just that next level, even 2 levels above his competition when he was behind the wheel of his Mercedes. I mean, this guy is just so fun to watch. You have to relish in this moment, this crazy time that we're in, and we have to appreciate what's going on. We've said this multiple times on this show throughout the year, and the fact that Lewis Hamilton gets to take home the honors of Driver of the Year from both of us here truly speaks to how well he was both on and off the track. Man, I'm very proud to give Lewis Hamilton that award because he has definitely earned it in 2020. That's it, Kyle. That does it for the 2020 Motorsports Award show here on the Green Flag. Very fun that we got to finally finish this after over 24 hours, but we did end up finishing it all. Great nominees, great winners, just great categories. Everything was really fun to put this together. Thank you once again to everybody who liked and voted on our social media page. That truly makes the experience 10 times more fun for all of us, for both of us here, to read out the votes and have an actual statistical analysis to break it down, and a deserving winner on the social media side of things. And then we also get to have some fun here with our nominees as well. But any final thoughts, I guess, for our big finale for 2020? Get to kind of wrap it up very nicely here with this award show, Kyle. It's been quite the adventure this season.
Been quite the adventure to record this episode as well. It's the longest it's taken to record an episode. I don't think it's the longest episode we've done. But that being said, what a season it has been. Just the fact that we've been able to talk about every twist and turn basically throughout the season has been fantastic. I've loved every second. Yeah, exactly. It's been awesome to follow it along. It's the closest I've ever followed a motorsport season. Usually I just kind of watch the NASCAR races, tune in live to a couple Formula One races, and then catch the odd IndyCar race as well. But this year doing the show as well has kind of taken my motorsports fandom to the next level, and I can't wait to see what 2021 brings. There's so many exciting storylines going into next year for all different forms of motorsports. I'll be watching a bunch of new stuff next year. We'll be breaking it all down on the show, and I can't wait to get things started.
Yeah. Couldn't agree with you more there, Kyle. It's been very, very fun. It's been my pleasure to work alongside you here this season. It's been turned into a hobby, to something that we've really become passionate about, and it's been the most I've ever really followed motorsports in a season. I've been watching all of them for many a year's time, but to have watched it, each Twitter notification put out by each person for their respective series, instant by second, and second by second, excuse me. I don't know, instant by second. What the heck am I saying? But just following it this closely and seeing all the breaking news, the announcements, the storylines, the race recaps, the fantasy previews. We can't forget about that. That's coming back in 2021. A very, very fun part that we're going to continue next year.
We might have to mix in a little bit of more fantasy. We might have to jump into the F1 stuff too.
Yeah, I think that's definitely within the realm of possibility there, because we're going to most likely get a full season from Formula One without any of these rough patches. Fingers crossed, knock on wood, whatever kind of thing you want to do. We're hopeful that 2021 gets off to a great start in a couple of months' time. But this show, very, very fun to kind of cap off the year. We'll most likely be back before the year rounds out to catch you up on any of the new stuff. But this was our big finale before the Christmas break here in the next couple of days. We'll take Thursday off because that is Christmas Eve, so we'll take that off, and then maybe we'll come back one time before the new year it ends out. But 2020 has been definitely a year to remember for a lot of reasons, and motorsports thankfully gave us some bright moments along the way. So I think that does it, Kyle. 2020 in a nutshell. The awards have been handed out. Congratulations to all the nominees and the award winners on social media and from our nominations as well. Been a pleasure. But for this episode, I've been Lukas Wacker. He's been Kyle Cushman. Signing off for now. We're wishing you a very, very, very safe holidays and a Merry Christmas. We'll see you sometime next in the rest of the season, I guess, next in 2020. We'll see what happens next. But thank you so much for following along. Thank you for voting. We really appreciate it. Stay safe and have a very Merry Christmas, everybody, from behalf of myself and Kyle. We really appreciate it. Stay safe.